What is up, YouTube? What is up, Canada? Matt McKeever here, and today, well, we're going to find out what the rules are, or the new rules, at least here in Ontario, because Doug Ford's going to be hopefully making an announcement at 2:30 if he remembered to set his alarm clock on time. Last time they kept us in the lurch a little bit here, where we had to wait a bit. But anyways, I'm excited to be chatting with you guys today. I've got a few things I want to share, a few resources before the government even comes up and tells us about the new restrictions. Sounds like, fingers crossed, we won't at least get a lockdown, but probably they're going to extend or we won't get a curfew, but it sounds like they're going to extend the lockdown and maybe try and amp up police ability to enforce those things and all kinds of silliness. But before we get into the silliness that is our day-to-day life, I'm going to share with you guys just a little clip here of a TV show that I've always loved. And if you guys are unfamiliar with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, well, you probably won't get the context, but anyways, let's do this.
What are the rules? Oh Christ, I'm singing again. What are the rules when you've just turned black and you can't switch back? Well, you gotta go and find out the rules. What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? When you just turn black and you can't switch back, well, you gotta go and find out the rules. What are the rules? Here we go with this. What are the rules? When your race has changed, life can be real strange when you're trying to figure out all the rules. Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
All right, well, that's probably enough of that, guys, but I just thought I'd kind of share with you guys. It actually does feel like the world's gone a little insane, and it's hard these days to know exactly what the rules are. So hopefully that added a little levity to a situation that I don't really actually find too much to laugh about. But what I figured we'd start off today, first, I'd love to hear your predictions on what the new restrictions are going to be here in Ontario, so jump in the comments. Let me know as well. I'd love to hear, where is your line in the sand? I've shared it with you guys in the past that I think a COVID passport is a stretch too far. I think that curfew is a stretch too far. I kind of wish I probably would have drawn my lines in the sand a bit earlier, but I think we're all kind of feeling like we've got a bit of egg on our face at this point in time, or at least if you're paying attention, you likely feel that way. But let's talk about some resources, because it turns out maybe some of you only get your news from the mainstream media. And, well, I think you could maybe use a sprinkle of other facts as well in there. So if you haven't checked out my buddy Mark's website and his YouTube channel and Rumble and all that, I really want to encourage you to jump over to Canada Poly. Check it out. Pro tip, just jump over to the forums, hit new posts. That's what I always love to do. And he posts his new videos every single day. Mark does a two-part video series now. And I really encourage you guys to go in there, check it out. And, you know, he's really just sharing kind of the stories that he sees on Twitter, some of the different newspaper articles and things like that. But I really appreciate what Mark's doing. So if you guys are looking for someone else like me that's maybe talking about this every single day, I want to encourage you to jump over and check out Canada Poly and hit up Mark. But secondly, you guys have heard me talk about before, I think it's really important that we start supporting people that are actually willing to talk about the truth. And I think The Blaze is a great example of that. Again, you may not agree with all of Steven Crowder's perspectives or politics, but he actually is a pretty straight shooter. And that's very hard to find today in your media sources. So, you know, I'm supporting The Blaze. I'm part of Mug Club. I really encourage you guys to jump over and support Mug Club as well. And if we're talking about something a little bit more local to Canada, Rebel News. Again, I may not love Ezra and everything that he does or stands for, but he is providing valuable information, and it's important that you guys watch this. This shit that happened in Montreal infuriates me to no end. And honestly, I got blocked for the first time on Twitter because I responded to, I think, a Global or a National Post. It was some other Canadian mainstream media person that said, you know, look at these people pretending to be press. Like, you should be ashamed of yourselves if you're taking joy in the fact that the Montreal police seem to just be going full on tyrant, right? The fact that they would declare that area where the reporters were a crime scene in the hopes that they'd eventually get a warrant, and then couldn't find the judge that was willing to risk their probably entire career on a fake warrant. This is serious shit, guys, and this is a slippery slope, and it is very concerning. So again, I want to encourage you, check out Rebel News. You may not agree with everything there, but it's important that you're at least seeing both sides of the discussion, because mainstream media is definitely only showing you one perspective as well. Understand, it's not just a bunch of fringe people. There are elected officials as well that aren't happy with what's going on. They're really not pleased. And so I want to encourage you guys to look at the group of Canadian politicians that essentially are calling themselves the anti-lockdown caucus, right? If I remember correctly, there's over 60 different elected officials that make this up. So again, whether it's like Maxime Bernier, whether it's Randy Hillier, lots of different Canadian politicians are speaking out. Some of them have been speaking out for a long time. And again, want to encourage you guys to spend some time and get informed. Jump over to CPAC's channel and watch this video that came out yesterday, just showing their perspectives and opinions on it. And then finally, we're going to try and quickly cover some random Twitter data for you guys, because again, I find that a lot of people are just taking the government's word for it without really digging deep into anything. So one, if you guys aren't following Milhouse Van Houten, I don't believe that's his real photo, but I would encourage you guys to follow him anyways. He's a great source of information, really love him. And he just followed me back the other day. So that was fun, but really encourage you guys to start following along and look at some of this data, right? This is pretty compelling here. So what we got is blue is cases by reported data, red is deaths from or with COVID. And then we've got the 7-day moving average and the CFR. They're pretty much lock and step there. But I mean, you show me how we know that we're going into a terrible second wave where bodies are just going to be piling up, because it really doesn't look that way. It doesn't appear that case. And the number of cases reported doesn't appear to really even impact that much the number of deaths. So I don't know. I hear rumblings on the Twitter nets that maybe we should stop getting tested so much so they'd have less data to just be throwing at us in our face. But Ontario's COVID case fatality rate cumulative peaked at 10.2% May 2020. It's now reached an all-time low of about 1.9%. So just thought I'd leave that there. Jumping over to Kelly Brown, again, really encourage you guys to jump over, follow him as well. So he's an independent investor, and he's also got on the COVID facts bandwagon, sharing some interesting graphs here. So again, this is the 2021 winter spring wave versus the 2020 spring first wave. And I mean, I would just love for you to point to me on the graph where lockdowns begin and end, because I'm not sure if it's going to match up exactly the way you want it to. And again, one of the things that I'm personally concerned about, why they're trying to push these lockdowns on us so fast, so hard now, when it really doesn't make sense, is they know that this is seasonal, or at least some of them know this is seasonal. They know that it's going to disappear a bit in the summer, and they want to be able to argue that lockdowns helped create that situation. Then jumping over, here's another one here. So this is the number of deaths from all causes in 2019 versus the number of deaths from or with COVID-19 in 2021. So again, I don't know what to say, guys. I don't see how this is the end of the world. I don't see how we need to completely destroy our freedoms, our economies, and everything that we built over the last few hundred years in this country just because of this situation. And then continuing along here, if you're not following along with your Ontario doctors, really encourage you guys to follow along. They're putting out some great discussions. I'm sure very soon, all this stuff I'm showing you will be considered illegal because it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative. If you're not following some of the new restrictions they're trying to push through on press and on open discussions, you should be really concerned about what's going on here in Canada. And now this is half meme, half data. Now the data side is actually a little bit blurry, so you guys should probably play around and try and find more. But every single thing we're showing here, there's either a link in the video description, or you can go on my Twitter, look at likes, and you'll be able to track it. But, magical COVID makes hospitals less busy. So 2018, we've been bouncing around 80 to over 100% ICU occupancy for quite a while. This isn't new to 2019 or 2020. In fact, you can see that it's been lower than it's been in the last couple of years. Now, again, that is because we're being proactive. We're making more ICU beds open and things like that. But again, this doesn't appear as if this is the disaster to end all disasters. Again, I want to try and get all this done before they go live at 2:30 if they're on time here. So Randy Hillier shared this photo of, or this little video of a Barrie emergency acute care yesterday. Well, a couple days ago now, maybe, but 4/14/21 around 1 p.m. I can understand why we need to get rid of all elective surgeries and why we need to all be panicking so much, because look at that craziness. And then Zuby here. I really love Zuby. He's from the UK. And I guess if we're trying to find the brighter side here in Canada, at least we're not the UK. But Zuby, I just really appreciate this. Weak, low status males love this COVID thing because it allows them to LARP as heroes by simply wearing a mask, taking a shot, and harassing other people. They can pretend to be strong, virtuous heroes whilst being frail, flabby, pathetic cowards. None of them even lived. And then, you know, he was responding essentially to this tweet here. Also, lots of low status males who also love arguing against face masks because it makes them feel like heroes of freedom. You know, it doesn't work that way, actually, bud. It's the opposite. And wearing a mask in a profile picture is 100% performative virtue signaling. Yeah, I agree. And it's time that we start virtue signaling ourselves. And again, thank God we don't live in Texas where they opened everything up, because we can see how terrible it's. Oh, actually, no, wait, that looks amazing. So, you know, once they opened up, actually nothing terrible happened. And then continuing along that, you know, let's look at where people are wearing the most masks. And, you know, where's the highest deaths per millions and what's going on there? Again, I don't know. I can't really draw a lot of correlation or causation here. Like, it seems pretty well scattershot across. And continuing here, that was just more on the Montreal police thing. And then finally, what I wanted to bring up here last before we get into talking about Ontario's lockdown, if you guys haven't been following along what's going on with Grace Life Church out in Alberta, you should be. And again, I'm not even a religious person, and yet I find myself defending religious freedoms more and more these days because, hey, it turns out the religious people are some of the few allies for individual freedom right now. I will happily argue for individual freedom, regardless it's mine or someone that's religious. But what's very interesting is it was essentially decided that the government doesn't need to show their facts. So I'm just going to read right here from the Justice Center. After 13 months of violating charter freedoms, the Alberta government refuses to present evidence in support of lockdowns in court. And unfortunately, the courts have permitted the government to delay facing accountability in regard to charter violations, states lawyer John Carpe, president of the Justice Center. Justice delayed is justice denied. It is clear that the government's approach to any challenge to its lockdown policies is to withhold the evidence and delay as long as it can, continues Mr. Carpe. The Alberta government supposedly has enough medical and scientific evidence to shut down hundreds of small businesses, pushing many of them into bankruptcy and to cancel over 20,000 medically necessary surgeries and to force Albertans into a third lockdown. But when asked to produce this medical and scientific evidence at trial, the Alberta government declares itself incapable of doing so. Yeah, like if you're not fighting mad at this point, I don't know. Where is your line in the sand? That's what I'd really like to know. And so I'm going to pull up this live stream here so we can watch it together. But I know a lot of you are like, hey, you're a real estate bro or a finance bro. Like, I don't want to listen to anything else you've got to say about politics or other things. But understand, if you want to someday be a real estate investor, if you someday want to succeed, you need to be able to have the individual freedoms that I have and had in the past in order to do this. Did you share that with me, Peter?
It's still not up.
Okay, so it sounds like the government still hasn't put up their live stream. If you guys have found their live stream and it is live, let us know in the comments section, but we have not found Mr. Doug Ford being live yet.
YouTube, but I've been trolling Facebook, YouTube, CTV.
Okay, yeah.
Nothing's up yet.
Yeah.
Last time they had it sitting for like 10 minutes.
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to be pulling it up. Otherwise, once I get a little bit more organized here, guys, I'll jump into some of your comments because I see you guys lighting it up there. Please do smash the like button. If this is your first time here, love it if you guys would follow along with me. And understand, one of the things that I've been trying to really push recently is get your financial house in order. Right now, they want you to become dependent upon them. And it's more important than ever before that you get your financial house in order because no one else will help you. Like, they want you to become so complacent and so dependent upon them that you won't be able to speak out. The reason I'm comfortable speaking out is no one can fire me. I'm my own boss. I own my own businesses. They can try and take my shit, but again, I'm comfortable with that. If you guys missed out, I read one of my favorite essays on civil disobedience titled Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. And in that, he says, I believe that that which governs least governs best, right? And this is so important. We shouldn't go to the government to solve all of our problems. We shouldn't be begging them to just take all of our liberties for a little bit of safety. I believe it was Patrick Henry that said, or maybe it was Ben Franklin, but one of the founding fathers, that, again, those who would give up liberty for some safety deserve neither. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I understand that those of you that just want to see grandma make it one more year, you've got good intentions. But the path to hell is often littered with good intentions. So again, it's not just the intentions that matter, it's the actual results, right? I honestly am scared for an entire generation of children being left behind right now because of what's going on in the schooling system. Now, I'm not saying the schooling system was perfect to begin with, but we need to understand that, I honestly think that there's a risk that if this continues on, studies have shown that online learning right now, the way they're doing it is not effective. And these children deserve the same chances that we had in the past. And it just it literally breaks my heart to think about it. And so actually, I don't, maybe this is getting a little bit too personal into my life, but yeah. The internet can be weird. Maybe I won't share that stuff, but I think it's really important. I would encourage you, if you've got young children, spend time reading with them, spend more time investing into their education. If you've got young nieces and nephews, start paying your siblings to teach their kids, start creating some sort of incentive program, pay them to read books, pay them to do book reports for you, whatever it is, teach them that learning is fun, that it is exciting, that it's not just a chore. I honestly believe that the only reason I'm the man I am today is because one of my grandmothers was a school teacher, and she was obsessed with getting me to love reading. And so she would do whatever. You want that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figure? Yeah, go read these books, right? Or read these books with me. And all I remember is reading with her. And I honestly believe that created the spark, the interest, the curiosity that I have today. I think that there's an entire generation that's being lulled into thinking that curiosity and that spark isn't important. And that this is just one giant vacation, one giant holiday away from school, and school didn't really matter in the first place. And this is now proving it. Again, our education system wasn't perfect, but at least it helped kids learn some of the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and so forth. And it just, again, I find it so unfortunate. We're getting reports they delayed the announcement to 3:30. How the fuck can you guys not pull this shit together? God damn it. Is it not bad enough that you lock down our businesses and don't let us go to work? But now we can't even figure out what the next set of rules are. God damn it. What do you guys want? Let me know in the comments. Are we going to hang out for an hour here? You guys tell me. I've got probably more screen shares and stuff I can pull up. If you don't mind checking my calendar, Peter, if you can DM that guy. I figured there's no way they're going to be late again a second time, so I'm safe with my 3 p.m. afternoon call, but sorry, Alan, we're going to be reaching out to you and rescheduling because this is just crazy.
How do they not have their shit together?
I know. It just, how do you guys set these times? Why don't you just set it later in the day if you can't get your shit together? If he needs a nap after lunch, plan around it. I just don't get it, guys. How does this consistently happen? And you think that this government can pull off implementing anything? They can't pull off a goddamn live stream, right? Probably a 6-year-old now can pull off a YouTube live stream. Now, again, I know they got to integrate with their question and answers and all that shit, but come on, guys. Do you really want to give them billions of dollars for UBI? Do you really want to give them power over how you live your day-to-day life when they can't operate what I do on a regular basis high? Literally, we pull this off. We have never missed a Monday night marijuana madness at 9:20 p.m. We have never launched late. And that is me getting baked on television. I have more of a commitment to my audience and fan base than the Premier of Ontario does to his citizens and electorate. This is just ridiculous, guys, that we can pull it off. Yeah. Oh, my God. Anyways, I know foaming at the mouth sometimes feels good, but doesn't really actually accomplish much. So let's talk about why this really does matter and why I care so much about individual freedoms and liberties. Because understand, this is a slippery slope. And the more power we give the government, the more power the government seeks. If you don't remember, actually, did I pull that up on my Twitter? I'll pull up another tweet here just to make sure I get my facts right. But if you guys remember back in 1913, pull out the old history textbook. And let me see likes here. So yeah. Oh, actually, fuck. I don't know where that got to. But anyways, in 1913, do you remember how income tax didn't exist before then? And it was implemented as a short-term tax just to tax the rich. And it was only going to be 3%, and that was it. Well, we all remember how income tax disappeared and we never had to pay. Now, I'm referring to America right now. But hey, if you go look into Canada, it was also a temporary measure that was also implemented in the 19-teens and seems to have stuck around a pretty long time. And that's what really scares me about all this. All these random rules, all these emergency powers. There's always another emergency. We can already see the narrative being written that climate change is an emergency just as great as COVID. And so it requires just as much powers. Where does it stop? Legitimately, if you do not draw a line in the sand, the bully will continue to push you and take more of your shit. Right now, none of us have been firm enough with that bully to draw a line in the sand. And until we seriously draw that line in the sand. Like Thoreau said, until 10 good, honest men stand up, until 100 good, honest men stand up, until 1,000 good, honest men stand up, nothing will change. And that's why we do this shit. Like, yes, you guys seem to like it when I get mad at Doug Ford, so we do get better views than average, so it is what it is. That doesn't hurt. But these videos never get monetized. These videos don't actually result in new subscribers or anything like that. Probably not good for my health, me just getting mad on the internet. But this is important to me because the same way that wearing a mask on your profile photo or wearing a mask while you're walking outside by yourself is virtue signaling, this is me virtue signaling to you guys trying to create common knowledge as game theory dictates that this is not okay. This legitimately is not okay, and I'm not okay with it. And every time my government does something stupid, I smash by and stack some sats. And so if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about Bitcoin and that entire world, I really encourage you guys to go read the white paper, right? Right now, I've got my team book club. So we actually do a book club for our employees here. And the book we're currently reading, well, we're reading Bold, which is an amazing book. But the other book that we do 2 books at once. We do the Bitcoin Standard right now. And I really encourage you guys to go check out that. It's on Audible. You can get the paperback. But if you guys are interested in dabbling, buying just a token amount of crypto, and I encourage you, if you're going to dabble with Bitcoin first, and just put in a low token amount. There's something different that happens when you start dabbling with real money. You're going to pay attention differently. So if you guys are interested, Shakepay is one of the easier ways. They're not a sponsor, but I do have a referral link in the video description down below. So if you guys go sign up and spend $100, you get $10, I get $10. But again, I don't even care where you get your Bitcoin, but I would love to see more of my audience because I actually like you guys. If I have to choose between you guys and the rest of the citizens of Canada, I'm picking you guys. So I would love to see you stacking sats so that when this fiat craziness crumbles, that at least maybe we can rebuild Canada in the image it should have been made in the first place. Because I mean, it's not going to be those paper dollars that are going to fix the problems we got. So yeah. It's just more important than ever that you get your financial house in order. What does that mean? Reduce your costs. Even if things are good for you right now, find a way to reduce your costs. So that's house hacking, right? Find a way to live for free. The average Canadian spends 30 to 40% of their income on shelter. If you can find a way to get your shelter for free, you're going to be so far ahead of the average Canadian that they can almost never touch you at that point. And if you can't afford to buy a house and rent out units or rooms in it, okay, rent hack. And if for whatever reason rent hack's not obvious or doable for you, then look at maybe a live-in super, or maybe there's a way that you can do intergenerational living. Again, I think that if anything, we need to re-embrace the family unit and multi-generational living. I'd love to take away the stigma of living with roommates or living with your grandparents or your parents or your kids or your grandkids. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And again, I think that it's a return to those sort of things that, one, is going to help you put your financial house in order, but two, is actually going to build stronger social bonds. So again, I talk about, trying to build a resilient, robust lifestyle. And I believe, again, that financial independence Building your financial fortress of solitude is step one. But the other aspect is your network, right? So we talk about your network is your net worth. Now, that doesn't just mean monetarily, but it also means how strong are the bonds you have. I think a lot of people learned during COVID, they don't have as many friends. They don't have as many deep relationships as they maybe thought. Or if you did, you may have neglected and allowed them to wither, thinking this was a temporary measure. It's important that you have strong bonds with your community, with your neighbors, with your friends and family. Again, those strong bonds are the reason that we see a lot of religious communities being willing to be the first to stand up and speak out against oppression. It's because that they know that there's a group that believes the same thing as them, that there's others that are the same type of crazy. I'm using air quotes there, so I'm not attacking anyone. I'm also crazy. But what's important is that we signal to the rest of the world that this is not okay. And again, it's so scary when I see what's going on in Montreal or Britain or parts of Europe, because it's just very obvious that our government would love to paint with the exact same brush, regardless of whether it actually gets the results. If it does get the results, why can't the Alberta government present that in court on May 3rd? Legitimately, that seems pretty reasonable, right? Am I missing something here? Let me know in the comment section, guys, and let me know where your line in the sand is as well. Ooh, we've got some comments. Okay. If you see some good ones, feel free to pull them up as well, Peter, just because I kind of have to read them first before I ever do. I'll pull this one up. I like this. Build your immune system, get outside and exercise. Yes. Literally, I hope that we embarrass government officials if and when this is all over they literally did the opposite with gyms of what they should have been doing, right? And I think we all know that now. If anything, we should have just made gym memberships free across the country and encourage people. Probably should have implemented some sort of sugar tax or something like that. If we really want, you want to talk about a sin tax, let's tax sugar and all the other processed garbage that just seems to be fine or even encouraged on like National Takeout Food Day or whatever silliness that they push, rather than telling you to get back to the basics. Don't talk about good health, good diet, good lifestyle, and promote good health, because then people might mingle. Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's just bizarre to me to see these narratives and like that the government won't come out and say that like, yeah, you should probably try and get some vitamin D into you, right? Maybe get some vitamin C, maybe exercise a little bit. Again, it's just such a bizarre approach. And I think due to that, it's so hard to take anything that comes from our government at this point in time sincerely, right? And that honestly is terrible. If we can't trust our government, if we can't trust their intentions, like the whole system breaks apart. And what we need is for governments to start being open and honest with their citizenry. We all know that locking down the schools is not about trying to stop COVID spread. At best, if we give them the benefit of the doubt, we can say that they're just trying to signal to us how serious the situation is. And so they hope that, hey, if schools close, they'll now know how serious it is. Do you understand how insulting that is to your intelligence? Do you understand how little they think of you as an individual? They do not think that you're capable of taking care of yourself. They do not think that you're capable of making the right financial decisions. They do not think that you're capable of deciding whether you want to stay at home or whether you want to go to work. And again, it seems based upon some of the rumors we've heard on Twitter and things like that, that likely we're not going to have a curfew implemented here in Ontario. But again, we shouldn't be excited the fact that the government's not going to boot stomp us this time, because that's the scary part, is there's that little add-on. This time, we're not going to boot stomp you this time. That's not okay, guys. Like, we need to become more comfortable speaking out and speaking openly and honestly. And you guys need to start virtue signaling however you see fit to help create common knowledge amongst those that are in your life. Again, it's not enough to just think, I'm secretly protesting this. I'm secretly against it. I believe that time has passed. It's more important than ever that your government understands that you are not okay with this, that you will not put up with it. And thankfully, there are a handful of politicians that actually are helping us. or at least trying to defend a little bit of the freedoms that we seek. So I'm just going to pull up Roman Baber here, who is doing a great job of speaking out against the provincial PCs here. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Roman Baber. Okay, so let's get the screen share up here, guys. But I wanted to share this in particular because if you are frustrated, if you do want to speak out, I'm going to encourage you to check out some of his. Oh, how did I screw that up? Check out some of his carousel posts, and he does, in fact, actually have something for us to do. So this is his call to action. Help us put pressure today. Share this post and call the Solicitor General, 519-941-7751, or the Attorney General, 705-726-5538, or contact your MP. And if you don't know how to do that, go to voterinformation.elections.on.ca / all that shit. But tell them you won't tolerate a police state in Ontario and that PC voters will fire Doug Ford in June 2022. Yeah, like whatever you believe will help create the common knowledge. I think that you've got a responsibility, you've got a duty. And again, it's not even just to save our ass. It's to save the next generation. It's to save all of our asses. Had someone not defended the freedoms that we want today in the past, we wouldn't even have the ability to try and argue against what's occurring here now. So again, it's just so important that you start making yourself more heard.
Right now, we can watch the Ontario Chief Medical Officer of Health discussing stuff on CBC.
All right. I don't know. Do you guys want to listen to the Chief Medical? Yeah, we might as well pull that up. That's something. And if it gets too dry, we can drop it. But all right, perfect. Yeah, send that to me on Facebook. Thanks, Peter. And again, if you guys are enjoying this, smash that like button, hit subscribe, all that good stuff, and let me know where is your line in the sand. And while Peter's pulling that up, I'll check out a few more things. Ford is shutting down Crown land camping in the province. Might be the craziest thing I've ever heard. Behind the gyms closing, obesity kills more people than COVID will ever. Yeah, and again, this is the thing where once we decide that COVID, that the flu, the common cold is too dangerous, what else is too dangerous, right? How quickly before we decide that we need to nerf the entire world? And again, people act as if this is in a vacuum, as in if we save one life because of COVID, it's worth it. What about all the lives, all the families that you're destroying right now? And you absolutely are. And I can only hope that years to come, when we look back upon this, we all remember who tried to force this upon us and that we continue to shame them for their wrongdoing. All right, so we got this up. Let's pull this up, get some volume going.
From the team, because things are moving that quickly. And I think that's a very important issue. We've been trying to raise this to your attention, that we are in very challenging and very concerning, worrisome times. They used the words yesterday, dire and scary. I would agree. And so with that, I'm going to first hand things over to Dr. Brown to take us through the updated numbers of where we are. And I think you will find them as daunting as others have seen them thus far. And I thank them for their ongoing work and for updating us accordingly. So Dr. Brown, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So every second week, we share with you data that describes our progress against the pandemic. We present models that try to anticipate the likely course of the pandemic, and we try to paint a more complete picture of the pandemic's impact. Its destructive impact on our health system, the threat it presents to mental health, and the importance of schooling, even during the pandemic, for children and families. This week, we will focus solely on our progress against the pandemic, and our progress is both frustrating and frightening. I believe we are all feeling something similar right now, whether we're working in a hospital, a warehouse, or a restaurant, whether we're a student or a retiree, everywhere, from my hometown of London up to Ottawa, from Windsor through to Kenora, I know some of us are frustrated, some of us are frightened, and some of us are just fatigued, and many I know are all three. After more than a year of fighting this together, we are now entering the hardest stage. Cases have risen, hospitals have filled up, and across Ontario, it is very clear we are very much in the third wave of COVID-19. And the numbers are still rising. But the biggest problem we now face may be that we're just too tired to notice. So I'm begging you as part of the team to notice. Notice that our hospitals can no longer function normally. They are bursting at their seams. We're setting up field hospitals, and we're separating critically ill patients from their families by helicoptering them across the province for care. Our children's hospitals are now admitting adults as patients, and this has never happened in Ontario before. It's never happened in Canada before. Notice, please, what is happening with vaccination. More people are getting vaccinated. We're about a quarter of the way through now the province's strategy. We're now focusing more on the people who need the vaccine the most, but the disparities are still there. The communities who need the vaccine the least are still getting more of it than the communities that need it the most. Our public health units are trying to prioritize communities to control the spread of the disease. This may be different in each public health unit, but please notice when it's your turn, and please get vaccinated. The vaccine protects you, and it protects the people around you. And the faster we get the third wave tamped down, the faster we open up. Notice when your friends, your neighbors, your children, or even your parents meet each other without masks. Notice if your workplace is open, but it shouldn't be. Notice if your workplace isn't safe. Notice the behaviors that we all know will put people in hospitals. In the same hospitals where we don't have enough nurses, respiratory therapists, or doctors to treat the patients. Notice that stuff and say something. It's uncomfortable, but it will save lives. Notice the places that have turned this around. One of them is right here in Ontario, Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay was the center of a huge outbreak only 2 months ago, but it's flattened its curve in an impressive way. The whole city came together, shut itself down, focused on the fight, and got it done. We all have to be like Thunder Bay, and we all have to do what we can do to reduce our contacts and reduce the spread of the disease. Notice California, which only a few months ago was suffering crises like the one we're starting to experience here, and which is turning it around. Not just because they have vaccines, because people went out of their way to get the vaccine. We have to get vaccines into each other's arms. There's no point in looking backwards right now. Notice that when you want to do that, and please look forward.
We have to get vaccines into each other's arms? Are you fucking serious? We have to into each other's arms, not into our own arms.
On those Ontarians who need it most. We know who is
I imagine, like most people, I've got no issue. If you guys want to go get vaccines, please do so. Absolutely encourage you guys to get vaccines if you'd like. But the idea that I have to get vaccines into your arm is evil.
This means people should not have to choose between keeping food on the table and keeping others safe by staying home. We need to support people so that they don't have to make that choice. And many people may need extra and easy to access support to stay at home when they're sick or they've been exposed to someone who is. This is true for cases and for close contacts. And we need to make sure that workplaces stay safe with enforcement. We need to limit as much as possible the entry of cases of the variants of concern. B117 is now the overwhelming cause of COVID-19 in Ontario, but it responds to vaccines. There are more concerning variants around the globe and within Canada. We need to limit the spread of these even more concerning variants across our communities. This means limits on borders and on movement. Our playbook as individuals is just as simple. I know we're tired, I know we're demoralized, and I know some of us are heartbroken. And I know that all of us want to take a break. But hang in there, please, with these 3 things. Just these 3 things, because these 3 things will help stop the pandemic. Don't spend time with people indoors. When you do need to be inside to shop, to take transit, or perform other essential tasks, please wear a mask. When you meet people outside of your household, meet them outside. And again, if you can't stay 6 feet away, always wear a mask. Get a vaccine when it's your turn. Help others get a vaccine when it's their turn. And wait for the vaccine when it's not your turn. That's it. Compared to the fatigue, the frustration, and the fear we feel, these 3 things are well worth it. They will help break the spread of COVID-19 until we can vaccinate enough people. The disease is complicated, but our playbook is simple. That is what the evidence tells us. It also tells us that the longer that we let this drag on, the worse it will be. And with that, let's get into the numbers. As we start to do the presentation, I'm sorry the sign language translation will disappear, but it'll come back immediately following the slides. If we could put up the slides, please. Thank you. Let me start, as we usually do.
Would love to
Key
see how this
findings.
compares
So
to the
COVID-19
previous
cases,
ones.
hospitalization, and ICU occupancy are at their highest levels since March 2020, and variant cases continue to rise sharply. And when we talk about high levels of ICU occupancy, we're almost 700 today, over 70 admissions yesterday. This level of ICU occupancy is compromising care for all patients, for all Ontarians who may need it. Ontarians can help themselves and others by limiting mobility to truly necessary trips and always wearing a mask and keeping 6 feet distance when in contact with anyone outside of their household. Although it's improving, vaccination is not reaching people at high risk fast enough to overcome the level of serious illness in our communities and our hospitals. And without stronger system level measures and immediate support for essential workers and high risk communities, high case rates will persist into the summer and perhaps through it. Let's turn to the first chart, which shows the rate of growth of cases across public health units in Ontario. You can see in virtually all of our public health units now, there has been substantial growth in the number of cases over the last 2 weeks. You can see that it has come down in a small number of public health units. This is largely due to strong public health measures being in place. And you can see as well here, I hope, that many of these increases over just 2 weeks are doubling of case rates. Test positivity rates are also increasing across Ontario. You can see here that the test positivity rate, when we calculated it earlier this week, was 8% for the entire province. Both the case rate and the test positivity rate are above the level that we used to call red or control, which gives us a sense of where we are as a province. That most of our communities are now in that level that we would be instituting very significant restrictions. And continuing, Ontario testing rates are flat. The increases in cases is because there are more cases, not more tests being done.
How can you prove that?
Stable level of testing, an increase in cases, and an increase in positivity. This tells us that this is a real increase in cases, and in this case, a substantial and sharp, essentially exponential growth in cases that we see in the province. Now, throughout the pandemic, we've talked a lot about the reproduction number. This is really a reflection of how many people are infected by every person who has a case. The higher the reproduction number, the more people who are infected. We talked about the greater transmissibility of the new variants of concern, the variants that were originally discovered in the United Kingdom, in Brazil, or in South Africa, and we've known that these were more transmissible. As you can see here, the reproduction rate for the variants of concern, which is in the left-hand panel in the orange chart, is well above 1. That's a sign of exponential growth. That means that cases are going to continue to grow substantially and rapidly for a while. But what's important is to note the right-hand side as well. The right-hand side in blue is the reproduction number for the earlier strains, for the wild-type variants, for the ones that were first identified in Wuhan in China. And you can see here that this reproduction number is also now over 1. So we're seeing a growth in the variants of concern that is dramatic and sharp. We're also now seeing growth in the earlier variants, which means that we are not really at the point yet of controlling the disease through the public health measures. Continuing on, this chart shows you the growth in hospitalization since the beginning of September last year and the growth in ICU occupancy. If you look over at the far left-hand side of the chart, you'll see that hospitalizations and ICU occupancy were very low in that lull period during the summer. This is a function of people completing their care, of people dying, of a variety of issues, but really we're able to empty out our intensive care units after the first wave. You can see in the second wave, the wave that really builds throughout November and December of last year and into the big bit of January, you can see that dramatic growth in hospitalizations that is accompanied a little bit later by a growth in ICU occupancy. But what's different now about the second wave, or what's different now about the third wave compared to the second wave, is that our ICUs, our intensive care units, never had the chance to empty out again. And so as we hit this third wave, as ICU occupancy rises, and remember the new variants of concern are not only more transmissible, they're also more dangerous. They are more likely to result in hospitalization. They are more likely to result in intensive care unit admission, and they are more likely to result in death. We're now filling up our intensive care units on top of what was still there following the second wave. And this is one of the reasons that we are in such jeopardy with our intensive care units. Let me turn now to the modeling and the projections of where we're going to be in the next little while with the pandemic. Once again, this is not one model that we're running here. This is 4 groups of scientists running different models with many, many scenarios. What we've tried to do here is consider what our likely trajectory would have been about 2 or 3 weeks ago, before the start of the public health measures. That's the red line. The yellow line here gives us a sense of where we would be with our current, or the ones that were announced most recently in terms of public health measures. That's kind of the moderate or the midline case. And then also what we would look like with stronger public health measures, perhaps more similar to the level of reduction in mobility that we saw at the beginning of the pandemic in April last year. And that's the green line. And you can see here as well a couple of other assumptions and variables that we tried to deal with. First, we're assuming here on all of these models, 100,000 doses of vaccine a day. That's roughly where we are right now. We're also assuming about a 60% effectiveness in terms of stopping transmission, not in terms of reduction of mortality, not in terms of reduction of hospitalization. Those are higher percentages that we use in the models, but here, percent effective in reducing infection. And we're assuming it's a relatively random administration of the vaccine. The other thing that we consider in all these is how long the public health measures last. The solid lines are for 4 weeks, and the dotted lines are for 6 weeks. As you can see here, had we not instituted the public health measures, the models are suggesting that we would have had a much, much higher rate of case growth to an almost unbelievable level of perhaps 30,000 before it would peak and come down. What the models are suggesting now, looking at where we are more likely, which is the yellow line, is that the case growth is going to be much less substantial. And if public health measures extend for 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks, we really blunt the second round of growth as part of this wave.
Those 2 extra magical
You can
weeks
also
just
see
change
with stronger
everything,
public
don't
health
they?
measures and a longer, that dotted green line, a longer period for them, for 6 weeks, we actually would get down to a much, much, much lower level of cases, much similar to what we would have seen during lulls between the waves, rather than what we're seeing now. I also want to note here that we've been looking at the briefings from previous weeks. The red box here indicates the range that we anticipated in the last briefing, and all of the models are in line with what we would have predicted in the last time. Before I move on to the next set of notes, I do want to note that the goal here is to flatten the curve as much as possible.
Where have I heard
curve
that term
down.
before? Flatten the
Every time we hit
curve.
one of those
Man,
milestones
take
where
me
we're
back to
starting
March
control growth, where
2020.
we're starting to flatten the curve. That's a cause for celebration. That's an indication.
Always
that we're
be
getting closer,
flattening, remember.
to a more
Always
normal
be
summer.
flattening curves.
It's a goal I think that everyone can kind of work towards, and we actually are able to see our progress almost on a daily basis of whether or not we are or not flattening this curve. If we go to the next scenario, I know that there's a lot of attention on vaccination. We took a moment to consider what it would look like if we had about 3 times as many vaccines being administered on a daily basis in the province that we have right now. So although we are not administering 300,000 vaccines a day right now, we did consider what would happen if we started administering 300,000 vaccines a day today, Friday. You can see, I think, a couple of interesting things here. Even under the weak scenario, that earlier scenario that we're no longer on that trajectory, that red scenario, it brings the peak down, it shifts the peak to slightly earlier, and it brings down overall the total number of cases. If you look then at that top yellow line, that top dotted yellow line, that's the moderate public health measures. That's where we think we're at right now in terms of the effectiveness of our current bundle of measures. That top line is a 6-week imposition of those measures. If we had 300,000 vaccines,
Yeah, I really like that comment, Mark. I was going to jump in there for a sec and just say just a few more weeks to completely flatten what's left of our economy. That definitely feels like the curve we're actually flattening at this point in time is individual freedom. Way less to do with any sort of
we don't have right now a day to administer
disease
that
or
peak is
infection.
earlier, lower, and the whole curve gets lower. So public health measures make a significant difference and have already made a significant difference in what we would see in this pandemic. Longer public health measures help really tamp down that curve and make sure that we get the cases under control. And more vaccines, if possible, actually add significantly to both the help significantly with the duration of this wave and the overall trajectory in the long run. Let me talk about what these different models now go back. I think we've lost our slides. If we can, thank you.
Let's
go
lost
back
his
now
slides.
to
I don't think
the
this is
ICU
us.
projections.
Is
So
it?
here
Oh, there
again,
we go.
we're assuming 100,000 doses of vaccine a day. We're assuming that patients are following normal protocols and entering intensive care units when they need the care. We're at about 690 patients in ICUs today. We had about 74 admissions to ICU yesterday. You can see that we're really growing at a very steep pace right here, right now with our intensive care unit occupancy. And we're starting to get to that very sharp part of the curve where growth is significant. Under any of the scenarios, I want to point out right now, under any of the scenarios, growth keeps on for the next 2 weeks. Whatever we have right now in terms of cases is really baked in terms of what happens to our intensive care units over the next 2 weeks. But you can see, if you look at the insert, that stronger and longer public health measures do help push down the overall target that we could hit. But over the next 2 weeks, it's likely.
I'm just so curious why this stuff doesn't matter in Texas, but it makes such a big difference in
well
Canada.
Above the old threshold that we discussed of about 300. We are on track over the next 2 or 3 weeks to actually hit almost 1,000 patients in intensive care units. And unless we're able to break that, we could actually see higher and higher levels. Now, it's not clear that all those patients would ever be able to enter an intensive care unit bed, even with the heroic efforts going on across the province to increase capacity right now. There may just not be the ability to put them into these types of beds. And not only that, there may not be the ability to put other types of patients into beds who require intensive care. So we are right now at a very significant point of growth in intensive care unit occupancy. Let me talk now a little bit about what's driving this growth in intensive care unit occupancy, what's driving the growth in cases, what's driving the growth in hospitalizations. This slide describes mobility. We'll go through 2 slides on mobility. This is really based on publicly available cell phone data. We're able to understand when people are outside or a good distance away from their home. You can see here that following the public health measures around the winter holiday, you can see there's a substantial drop in mobility and it stays low for a while. This is really the result of first, people staying home around the holidays, but as importantly, the public health measures. And although
I've always said, if we could just literally get people to never leave their house, everything would be perfect. Forever. Just forever. You should never leave your house again, and we'll get mobility down to 0. Imagine, once we've got 0 mobility and 0 freedom, then maybe you can be a little bit healthier.
Mobility has increased again substantially. And anyone who is looking at one of our major streets here in Toronto or commuting back and forth from work on one of our major highways is probably able to see that increase in mobility very easily. And although it is starting to come down now with the new public health measures, you can see that curve coming down on the far right-hand side. It's not down far enough to control the spread of the pandemic. On this next slide, you can see we've decomposed some of this change in mobility to look at places where people are often indoors, workplaces, retail and recreation, and transit. And you can see basically the same pattern again repeated. A drop around the holidays, followed by an increase, and then
I hope Doug comes soon. I'm not sure if I can take this much longer.
Control of the pandemic, and then just the start now as well of it coming back down, which hopefully indicates that the public health measures are starting to work. But we're not yet at that level of mobility at this point in time that would allow us to really, really control spread. There is other mobility data, but we're focusing on indoors here because that is where the majority of spread happens, is indoors. Continuing on, you can see the impact on the health system continues. We're now at a backlog of surgical cases of almost 250,000 since the start of the pandemic last March.
Hey guys, Peter and I were just chatting, and I'm pretty sure, I just want to make sure we all know what happened, right? They knew that none of us were going to listen to this bullshit, so that's why they tell us Doug will come on at 2:30 with the new rules. Then they force us to listen to this, so that then Doug can come on once we're all tired and tuckered out from all just the stats.
And what's going on. The strategy is about a quarter of the way through. In fact, it's more than the 24% through that we're presenting here. This was calculated a few days ago, and it's actually increasing now over time. If you look at the far left-hand side of the panel, that's the bar or the part of the bar chart for older people. This is over 80, and you can see that it's almost blue, which is people who've either had a first dose or made an appointment for their first dose. And there's only a small bit of yellow left, which is people who've not received the first dose. Moving to 70 to 79, you can see again, it's a substantial number. The vast majority of people have received a first dose or are booked now for their first dose. But when we get to 60 to 69, you can see that actually it's only about half have either received their first dose or been booked for it. And then looking over at the right-hand side, you can see under 60, younger people in the province, this is a substantially lower amount of vaccine.
Hey, Corey, I'm going to actually call you out on this comment because in the past, I always was happy with other people's opinions, but your comment here, Corey Vincent, I think you're the problem. Most people on this chat, including the host, are a big part of the problem. Please love others enough to do what is right. This may inconvenience you a little, but it may save lives. What about all the lives you're destroying, Corey? What about all the mental health you're destroying, right? If you want to save lives, ban cars, ban alcohol. Ban cigarettes, ban everything, ban being alive, and we'll never have another mortality again. Just kill all the humans right now, and you'll never have to worry about COVID again. That's the 100% solution to COVID, is just to get rid of everybody. So no, Corey, you are the problem, actually, and it's people like you that will just keep towing the line. In 2023, should we still be flattening the curve? Do we just flatten the curve forever, Corey? Legitimately. You are the problem, and it's people like you that are the problem. The time for complacency is over. The time for just no, save lives. No, you're wrong. We aren't stacking bodies in the street. We never have been, and we're tired of this bullshit.
Vaccine. The picture actually is improving, though. That's a smaller disparity than in the past. And as we start to move down into younger age groups, you start to see the type of difference that we'd like to see. Say, for instance, in the age group of 70 to 74 years of age, 57% of people in the highest risk neighborhoods have received the vaccine. 39% of people in the lowest risk neighborhood have started to have received the vaccine. And so that's the sort of difference that we want, that will really help control the spread of the virus in the highest risk neighborhoods. That picture continues on for a while through some of the middle age groups, but you can see as we get into younger age groups again, that disparity emerges again. For instance, in age 16 to 39 years, 5% of people in the highest risk neighborhoods have received a vaccine, whereas 10% of people in the lowest risk neighborhoods have received a vaccine. And so it's important to keep on correcting that level of disparity. Now, moving on to our last slide of results. If we took about half of our vaccine and we focused it into these highest risk neighborhoods, it pays a substantial dividend in terms of control over the pandemic. And so we're considering here a vaccination strategy that is at about our current level, at about 100,000 vaccinations a day. We're thinking about putting about 50% of vaccines into the 20% highest risk neighborhoods. And you can see that it actually provides a substantial improvement in control over cases compared to allocation of vaccines based on age and population size alone. And if you'd like to think about the number of vaccines you need to give to stop or avert a case of COVID-19, if we just do an age-based allocation across the province, it takes about 60 vaccines to avert a case. And instead, if you really focus it in with about half those vaccines in the highest risk communities, it takes about 30 to 35 vaccines to avoid a case. And so a very, very big return if we're able to continue on with this focus of vaccines, as is indicated in the phase 2 of the strategy, focus in on high-risk communities as much as we can. I'll finish here with our key findings, as we always do. If maybe we could return to the slides. Thank you. COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and ICU occupancy are higher than they've ever been before. ICU occupancy is compromising care for all patients. Ontarians can help themselves and others by limiting mobility to truly necessary trips, always wearing a mask, always staying 6 feet distant from anyone who's outside their household. Vaccination is improving, both in its rate, or its volume, and in terms of its focus on the areas where it'll do the greatest good. But we're not moving fast enough yet to overcome the level of serious illness in those communities, and that is in our hospitals now. And without stronger system-level measures and immediate support for essential workers in high-risk communities, these case rates will persist. And moving on here to the contributors, these are the scientists and experts from across the province who've contributed to the material in this briefing. And I could spend a lot of time just calling out their volunteer work here. I'll also note that there's about 120 scientists who serve on the various tables right now providing advice, and I'm really grateful for what they provide every week. And with that, Dr. Williams, I'll turn it back to you.
Are those people volunteers or do they get paid?
Well, thank you, Dr. Brown. And as we've been going through the last number of weeks and today especially, we're seeing the extreme concerns, and the modeling data supports that, of what we're facing today and in the weeks ahead. And we continue to take and value the advice of the science table as we try to look at implementing and dealing with the aspects of how to respond to this in that. And I know later on today, we'll be making some more announcements on that in this afternoon. Yesterday, Dr. Heyer and Dr. Yaffe spoke about the update with the data, and it was sobering even before we had the modeling. So the real data supports the modeling as well. And they're talking about dire and scary and the aspects there. I think that's one aspect I hear often referred to. People say, well, why can't it be as good as we saw people doing back in March of 2020 when we had the first wave? And a big difference I hear then and now is that people were more concerned, worried, fearful at that time than they are now. But from the modeling data, as Dr. Brown's alluded to, there is real necessity to be worried and to take apprehension and the aspects of there seriously. And so we're looking at that. If we look at our data for today,
remember, always be scared. ABS.
We could actually top 5,000 before the weekend. And that isn't consistent with the modeling data. There's 1,955 patients in the hospital. And we have, in my data here, it's over, just as Dr. Brown said, 700 in the intensive care unit. Our positivity rate has gone up with the tests done today, 64,304. Well, that's more than the last few days. It doesn't have the pattern in the past. We would sometimes shift up to 70, 80,000 tests, but we're staying consistent with the number of tests, but the positivity is going up. And so therefore the rising numbers, as Dr. Brown has alluded to, is not a matter of more people getting tested, but in fact, the positivity rising up to 8.2%. That's down from when we peaked earlier in the week, close to 10%. We're down a bit, but that is a lot higher than we experienced in the past. So that means we expect the numbers to rise and go up again tomorrow. In our cases in Ontario, when we look at across the whole province, our rate per 100,000 has gone up 37% in the 1 week only. And we're at, for the Ontario average, because people seem to think it's more about one area, another area, the overall average for the province is 186 per 100,000 people. A few weeks ago, we were just around 100, and 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were under 100 for the province. That's how fast things have progressed and changed. So that tells us what the variants are making an impact. And as Dr. Brown's alluded to, that they now make over 70% of our samples being submitted. And of those 70%, the majority by far is the B1.1.7 or the UK variant that continues to have havoc. But that brings a point in hand, is that unlike the first and second wave, we're actually dealing with 2, maybe 3, hopefully not 4 separate epidemic curves going on. That's a new challenge for us. We have still the COVID we had before is still causing outbreaks and major cases in various parts of the province. Some have only those at the moment. Others, they're seeing the great impact of the B1.1.7, and that's leading to huge numbers, outbreaks, and hospitalizations. But we're also seeing a rise, small yet, but worrisome, of the P1, the so-called Brazilian variant, that is having impact as well. We're trying to keep it contained. Thus far, the B1.135 is staying, the South African variant is holding, but it doesn't mean we can take it for granted. So we have these events going on at this time. That is different than we did in the first wave and the second wave. And as Dr. Brown has alluded to and said many times in the modeling data, the relative risk of these variants over the older version of COVID is much higher. Higher for admission, higher for ICU, and higher for mortality. And affecting younger populations with much less of an inoculum or virus load, causing infection very quickly in short intervals and having much more rapid onset, and now impacting younger and younger populations in our society. So it means everyone has to take really strict adherence to the measures. One of the things that Dr. Brown's alluded to in his charts there, he talked about mild, moderate, and strong public health measures. And those are very critical. All along, we put public health measures in place. And there's two things when we ask that. What's the difference between those? Some are ones that only do a little bit and ask for more and ask for more. That's one metric of mild, moderate, and strong. But the other aspect is, what is the adherence to those measures? If people don't, it's a mild one. Even no matter how strong you make it sound, people don't listen. If you do moderate, a good amount are. If you do strong, everyone does. So it has to be both sides here. We both have to do our part on this one here. And the other epidemic I'm talking about and I'm seeing over the last while is that as we've done and we've had ability to keep our deaths down and to keep our cases down thus far, there's been a sense among the public that this pandemic really is not such a big deal. Nothing could be further from the truth. And sometimes people say the measures that we have to do for strong control are more bothersome to me than the fear or concern of getting COVID. You may have felt that from the first or second wave. You should not feel that way with the third wave. And you really have to take this seriously now. So we need to turn that back for those that are saying, I'm going to do my own assessment and decide what I want to do and don't want to do. I really can't emphasize.
For everyone just joining us, we're expecting Doug Ford at 3:30. So fingers crossed, he'll only show up an hour late for us. But I mean, it's not like this is an important announcement that dictates the rest of your life or anything like that, or at least the next 4 weeks of your life.
So that's that aspect around two things. One, sticking to the measures, the masking, the distancing. Listening to our new directions on how we're going to ask you to be very strict on this. We're trying to do our part to make sure those are strong. We need you to do your part to make sure they're strong. And then the other aspect is your mobility. If you don't need to go out, don't go out. If you don't need to go wandering around, don't go around, because you not only risk getting exposed. If you might have been exposed, you risk to bring to other areas that haven't got the same impact. So you have to be considerate of one another, encourage one another. Maybe not wearing the mask, to say and politely, you need to wear that mask properly. In a household, you really can't come in the house. I'm sorry, not at this time. So we want to do it in a way that we respect each other, because this is a community-wide response. The other part, as mentioned by Dr. Brown, is the vaccination. And the vaccination, our challenges, we would like to have a lot more vaccine than we've got. If we had as much vaccine as we have, we could be doing well over 500,000 doses a day. But that's not the reality right now. And we would have liked to have it higher all along. We're trying our best, along with our federal counterparts, to get that up. But when you wait your turn and you get in the line to do that, because we want to make sure everybody gets done in the right way. We want to do our high-risk people first. And in some of our high-risk areas and neighborhoods, we need a community interest in that. There are people in there that are not sure where to go. They're not sure how to get it sometimes. Sometimes it's technology. And sometimes there is some apprehension. There may be some language issues. There may be some cultural issues. And we're saying as a community in that area, when we identify as a high-risk area, do your part as a community member. Encourage your fellow community members. Go out and get vaccinated. We will help you to get vaccinated. We will take you to the place to get vaccinated. We will help you to register on the online COVAX system.
Hey guys, for anyone joining us, 3:30 is the expected time that Dougie's supposed to come on and tell us what are the rules.
And if there's problems and issues, we want to know how to solve that. So that's a community response at the same time to make them strong. So we need to be strong in our measures we're asking. We need to be strong on how we are seeking to enforce them.
If
We need to be
anyone that's saying
strong
it's going to
on
be
how
at 4
we
p.m.
as
can
individuals
confirm
are
that,
adhering to
please
those
do
measures.
share in the comments where you guys are getting that source, because if it's at 4 p.m., that would be helpful for us to know.
Nation, to make sure that we're encouraging ourselves individually and as a community to put those aspects in place. So by doing that really stringently over the next number of weeks, as the data has shown, and we've seen that the science table has adjusted as they've seen the changes in the
Real talk, guys. How can you trust a government that can't pull off a live stream? Again, like I said earlier this live stream, me and Peter do it every Monday night at 9:20 p.m. Somehow we're able to pull off a live stream consistently at the time we tell you guys, and yet our entire government organization can't show up on time. Or even just an hour
our part
late.
to bring it down. But that's also
Ridiculous.
advising you, as of today, what you need to do, each of us, individually and personally, because we can do this. We've did it before, and we can do it again. We need to do it for many reasons. One, we've now had to close our schools. We did not want to do that. We don't want them closed.
Oh yeah, they didn't
And that's
want to
having huge
close them
impacts
whatsoever.
on our children.
Definitely
We want
not.
them open if we can. But we said if they go up too high, as they
Goddamn
did, they started
liar.
to threaten the schools. The schools were not a source, but we had to close with much anguish. And now we've had to cancel, for most of the province, elective surgery. We really didn't want to do that, but we have to do that. And as Dr. Brown said, if you keep going, even getting access into ICUs and that will be challenging. So it's not just because of what you do personally, it's how you affect the whole of our community and about our provincial response. Again, I am very hopeful. I know that our Ontarians, for the most part, a lot of them are doing what they need to do. But as more and more people are sort of saying, I think I can work around this and just play it by ear. A bad decision. And you need to be very careful in the next number of weeks, especially. And I know if you do that, we all work together to do that with mobility, sticking to public health measures, and getting vaccinated, we'll bend the curve on this one. And I think we can do all those things to get our hospitals back down, to give relief to the hardworking hospital staff that are there, to give relief to getting our children back into schools, and all those things to getting back potentially. I know you've given some dire projections about the summer. We still have some hope to get there, but that means everyone's going to have to do their part really well, really consistently, and very steadfastly over the next number of weeks, especially. So thank you for what you're going to do, and we'll continue to do our part. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the media for questions.
We'll go to the phone lines. Just a reminder, one question, one follow-up. Over to the first question, please.
Antonella Artuso, Toronto Sun.
Hello, doctors. Thank you. If we hit 10,000 cases a day, a not unlikely scenario in May or June under your modeling, what does our hospital situation look like? At what point does the triage framework truly kick in?
So thank you. And we are trying to work as quickly as we can, a large sector, and with the Ontario Health and with our health partners throughout to try and increase our capacity. So when you're getting up to 10,000 cases a day, and we're working at now, what is the hospitalization rate in there? It's fairly, it's higher than it was. We were looking at 6% before with the variants of concern. That's higher now. And that means if you do some arithmetic, those numbers start to exceed. So we need to be looking at capacity. We have our different areas we're working stringently at, not only just beds. The key thing is human health resources. We need the staff to man those. And that's a major aspect there. So we have to look at all components to handle that. So I don't want to get to 10,000. I like the way those curves say we can bend it down. So in that way, is a real dire warning. We need to get that number bending and to bring it back down as soon as we can, because it will have implications. Do we want to put a triage system in place? No one wants to put a triage system in place. But in other aspects of pandemics, where large epidemics hit populations, unfortunately, there's large percentages of not only hospitalizations, but large percentages of deaths, more than we have seen in Ontario. We don't want to go there. No one wants to go there, but it is a reality. And you have to understand that that's what a pandemic does. But we can do it. We've done it before. So let's see if we can keep that down and not get to the 10,000. But we're trying to plan in case we have to. We have to do what we need to do when we have to do it. And that may not be a pleasant decision, but we're going to have to make that one.
Follow up?
Thank you. Did our good summer just disappear?
Well, I know Dr. Brown a couple weeks ago was saying with all things in line, we can look forward to a summer. Now he's saying the way things are, I'm not so sure. And they talked about high case numbers over the summer. That depends on a lot of things there. And I think if we could get that vaccination rate up to 300,000 a day, including if we put some stronger measures in, if we can get our vaccination rate, because I know in Ontario, we can easily do 500,000 a day, if not more, if we get the vaccine volume. And we continue to seek that, coerce for that, drive for that, and try to get that so we can get that kind of level up. And with that kind of level of coverage, we could have that available, but it's at risk right now. And that's what Dr. Brown and his data has alluded to, unless he wants to make some comment about that.
Maybe I'll just add to that. So under the scenarios we're looking at, if we had a very, very strong adherence to the public health measures, if we were able to really tamp down the spread of the virus right now, and if we're able to get as many vaccines as we can into arms, I know we can do 100,000. That's working out right now. 300,000 is a very optimistic scenario, but were that able to happen, you see very low case numbers by the end of June. You see really kind of that receding of the pandemic, and barring sort of things that are hard to anticipate around new variants, you could still see something of a summer. But it really requires everyone to pull together. It really requires as many avenues and vehicles as we can on the system level, and really requires strong individual behavior.
All right, guys, it
question.
sounds like Doug's going to come on at 4
Loretta,
p.m. If you're
Loretta.
enjoying this, smash the like button, share it on Facebook, and
Hi there. Thanks for
I
taking
will
my
live stream my
question.
reactions
Looking
to
at
Doug's
page
comments
8
if we
and
ever hear them.
those various curves, you said that we are right now basically along that yellow line. What would be a list of strong public health measures that would need to be taken to get us down to that green line, Dr. Brown?
Do you mind if I answer that one? So there's no silver bullet in any of this. There's no single measure we can put in place that will bring us down to that green line. But there are, I think, a series of things that would really help change. And I just want to sort of maybe stop here for a second. I think we all sort of hope that there was some magic combination of the minimum number of things we could do. The science isn't there, but what we do know looking at other jurisdictions, what we do know looking at our own experience here in Ontario, is that when we really put a lot of effort into this, when we really try to focus on this, we can bring the numbers down substantially. And so the first thing is doubling down that vaccination into the highest risk communities. That's where the most cases are right now. And it's because of the risk of exposure, because the people in those communities are essential workers. They can't work from home. Because the people in those communities don't have appropriate housing. They're crowded together. They can't isolate. Because they've got multi-generational households. And so it's just through no fault of those individuals, the risk of exposure is highest, and that's where you want to put the vaccines to help break that chain of transmission. So doubling down on that is really important. At the same time, more vaccination is really helpful. Second, we really need to make sure that workplaces are safe. There are going to have to be workplaces that are open. That's a primary area where spread will happen. So first, making sure that the list of what has to be open is as small as possible. Second, making sure that there's enforcement of safe workplace activities, that there's actually sort of observation to make sure that people aren't finding themselves in challenging situations that lead to spread. And there is a federal benefit for sick leave, but what we've seen looking, for instance, at the United States is that there's probably more benefit that would be helpful, and making that easier for people to access would be helpful as well, and help really prevent people from having to make a choice between, paying their rent or putting food on the table and going to work. It's a terrible choice for anyone to be facing. Finally, we talked about workplace, talked about vaccination, limiting mobility. You've seen that there's been, Dr. Williams started to talk about this, there's been spikes in other provinces and some of the variants of concern. We're trying to keep those, the P1, B1351 under control here in Ontario. Limiting mobility into the province and limiting mobility around the province. I hate to say it at this point, there's emerging evidence that when you have a series of kind of patchwork rules in different communities, people tend to move, particularly to adjacent communities. We saw that in our own mobility data. When there was things open in one public health unit but closed in another, people moved over. So really limiting mobility within communities as well. So borders, but also within our borders, limiting mobility will help. And finally, Dr. Williams has said this repeatedly, but when we engage in the sort of simple precautions like mask wearing, 6 feet distance, really limiting our trips outside to when we're getting food or other essential goods or for essential tasks, that really helps bring it down when we engage in good hand hygiene and all of these things. So the more that we do that, it's not just about protecting ourselves, it's about protecting the people around you and really helping the whole province get out of this as quickly as possible. I'm sorry, that was a long answer.
Follow up?
Thank you very much. Is this the disaster that you were predicting 2 months ago? And could the government have prevented it if it had followed the modeling that you presented then?
The decisions about what government does are well beyond my pay grade in this. We've been anticipating a spike in cases because of the variants of concern. We started to put kind of a little box on our models to sort of show how we're doing now against our predictions. So yes, this is what we were expecting moving forward if we relax public health measures. And yes, the more that you can kind of keep, and as Dr. Williams said, not only public health measures in place, but adherence to the public health measures, the faster it tamps down. People, I think, often kind of look at it as some sort of trade-off, right? Have the public health measures or have the economy. Have the public health measures or have more opportunity for folks to move around and to live their lives. It's not a trade-off. Every jurisdiction has found itself, as cases rise, having to impose stronger measures. And sooner or later, you have to do it. What I would say is that if we want to move forward with as good a summer as we can, the stronger measures we have in place, the longer we have in place for now, means that we don't have to keep on doing this.
Yeah, and I would add that I think in the process there is when we talked about it 2 weeks ago, there was recommendation then that we needed to put back down lockdown province-wide. And 2 days later, we did. A week later, there was a strong recommendation to put it stay at home. 2 days later, we did. And each step along the way. But even then, the projections on the science table have been altered and changed as they saw the change in the presentation of the virus, as they understand more how it's impacting. It's a very dynamic thing because we are intertwined with other parts of the country and internationally as well. And we're seeing this impact in our society. So while there is an alarming rise in the numbers, and I don't want to scare people more than you need to, is that it can get a lot worse, even more worse than the modeler is putting forward. And other countries you can look at where that has happened. So we have to take it seriously and move ahead. Things can change very quickly. The modeling projections have changed week over week. And that's what we asked them for, to update and make it current, what was seemed to be the projection before. But it is interesting. A few weeks ago, they said that now we'd have 600 to 700 ICU beds. But the cases were different. 2 weeks ago, they said 600 to 700 beds. Same number. But the cases are different. Now, a different one. So there's a different movement through, and we're seeing that happening. So we have each time looked at this issue in the face. We're looking at it now, and how do we go at this with the strong measures that we've talked to, and Dr. Brown just went over those again, and we can turn those numbers back down again. So my main concern is that people do not take it seriously. That is a major concern, and that does lead us into a more disastrous situation. We have to do everything together and do it stringently and do it carefully, and we can make it happen. We can turn it around.
Next question.
Jeff Gray, Globe and Mail.
Oh, hi, thanks. I wanted to ask just about the ICU projections, which, if I understand Dr. Brown correctly, a real catastrophe is just going to happen no matter what scenario, no matter what color the line is. There isn't another chart there that shows the effect of more vaccinations or more targeted vaccinations. Is there any way to avoid that the numbers that are in that ICU chart, the 1,500 to 2,000 beds?
So in the very short run, the answer is no. The sooner we have strong public health measures and strong adherence to public health measures, the sooner that curve changes. The sooner we have stronger vaccination, more vaccination, the sooner that starts to change. But really for, the next week or two, those numbers are baked in. That's not going to change. That's the nature of the disease. The cases right now that you see are the people who are going to be in the intensive care unit a week to two from now. So that's really set now. There is opportunity, though, to start bending it really following that period and avoid it. But that's where, the measures and adherence, the uptake of vaccination and the number of vaccinations really starts to play in. It's not now, it's not next week, it's later on.
Follow up?
And to follow up, I guess, to Dr. Williams, the obvious question then, and the CDC did get it just a minute ago, but the whole point of public health measures to stop COVID from spreading was to stop the catastrophe from unfolding in hospitals of people being turned away who need life-saving care. It looks like that is an inevitability now. Is that not a failure? Did you not fail to protect the province from this?
So unfortunately, the quality of sound is jumbled, so I'm going to try and guess what I heard you ask about, that with the numbers projected with the hospital, the intensive care unit, and with the public health measures, I think you're asking that because it's going to be going up to the numbers projected and it's locked in on this, is that evidence of a failure? And it depends on what you mean as success. And one of the things that's very concerning to me is that there's very much a perception, a lot of people, is that if we are successful, we would have no hospitalizations and no deaths. That's not a pandemic, that's a nundemic. And that's not what we were anticipating. Unfortunately, we were anticipating that, and where our expectation was even higher, much higher than what we have now. We have done various steps along the way to keep bending the curve down in the face of new challenges, both within the changing of the actual virus agent and agents, plural, and with the changing of mobility of people and activity of people and their behavior. So we keep trying to bring that under control and bring it back down again. So the fact is that, and as Dr. Brown said, is there a magic bullet or a formula that will give you success? The answer is no, not really. It's a compilation of a number of things, and they're all moving at the same time. So there is no success formula. There is many things we can do to keep winning on this one and bringing it down. But it is a real thing. There are going to be hospitalizations. And those hospitalizations, as Dr. Brown's alluded to, with the new variants, there's going to be a higher mortality rate than with the old one. We haven't seen that yet. In our other waves, most of our mortality, we saw cases, even with smaller numbers, of 80 to 90 a day. That was in our long-term care institutions. With our vaccination program right now, even this last while, the report today, they've had no deaths for over a week in the midst of all these high numbers. And in the retirement homes, it's very minimal. So we have moved that curve with vaccination. We're trying to get the rest moved at the same time. So there's no total success. There's ways to keep making it better and to keep bringing it down. And we have to keep working on that. And I am hopeful that we can keep driving it, and with seeking advice and ongoing updates from Dr. Brown on the science table and from our public health measures table, we will endeavor to do our part, but that means everybody has to do their part.
Next question.
From Jason Chapman, Global News.
Doctors, thanks so much for taking the question. I want to zero in on the patients that are in ICU right now. The question I tried to look up and tried to understand is how have those patients wound up in the ICUs? And my question is this, is what are the most at-risk activities that lead those patients to wind up in ICU? Do we have data on the most dangerous
This actually
activities?
sounds like a useful question. I assume he accidentally got through.
Well, I think that's an excellent question. Not just the activities. We're trying to understand what is the granularity. What are the risk factors that people are involved with? We're seeing that most of it, and still there are a lot of patients in the ICU are that are over the age of 60. So it's not everybody's under 60. The concerning part is that we're seeing a shift. and a movement. But still, a lot of our patients in there are over 60. And our doctors in there are looking at each one and trying to assess, is there any pattern around risk behavior, risk activity, predisposing factors? And we know that there tends to be more males at the moment. We've seen more recently that pregnant women have been impacted by this third wave, as they were not so much in the first and second. We're also seeing a younger age group. We're seeing still people with comorbidities, with issues like diabetes and other respiratory issues that are compounded by it. So we know those factors. But we're asking now in this third wave, are we seeing some other differences? How should we, as Dr. Brown's alluded to, how should we target our vaccine programs, not only just in the high-risk neighborhoods, but who are those high-risk individuals that we would want to identify and make sure that they are covered with vaccine as soon as possible? So I'm asking those questions because it is changing, and we need to be informed by our experts that are dealing with this in day out. And with these large numbers, we want to understand, how is that shifting? How's it changing? And then how should we shift our priority setting to try and circumvent that impact on those individuals who is more at risk, and that the public can know, because then those at risk are going to really have to take precautions and be very careful with their exposure in the next 4 to 6 weeks, especially.
Follow up?
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Doctor. Dr. Brown, you alluded to Thunder Bay being an area of the province that we should celebrate right now. They've been able to get high case counts down, and I'm presuming higher hospital rates down as well. So this is where I want to sort of drill down on, though. What did they do? Because it's my understanding that they did this essentially under the gray zone restrictions. So what measures did they take that we should celebrate and copy across the rest of the province?
Thanks. So, one of the things that I think they did, which is really important, is they intervened early. Thunder Bay, Dr. Williams, correct me if I'm wrong, but Thunder Bay sought to be put under the restrictions that they came under.
So, and thank you for bringing up Thunder Bay, my health unit where I've at for many years, and hometown in that. In one sense, when they saw the numbers rising quickly, we put them in the gray, and then they wanted to go into the lockdown, and we did that before we had it in place. And then we asked them to look at where the outbreaks were around. They quickly moved in to find out where the initiation was in certain centers, how that impacted their high-risk populations in the community. A lot of aspects were concerned around with the number of people we have with our urban Indigenous populations, how to move quickly. So they asked us for more help as far as case contact management. They asked us for more vaccines to vaccinate those high-risk populations.
I know this shit's not good for my
do
health
that.
listening to
And
this.
now 3 to 4 weeks after that, we're seeing the impact of that vaccination program, as well as they went in preemptively with the discussion with the boards of education to close schooling at that time because the amount in the community was so much. It was impacting that. So many steps were taken, serial on the way, not just one. And they assessed it as it moved its way through their at-risk populations and did number of steps to stem that. And we assisted them from the province, whatever we could. They still haven't seen, fortunately, the variants of concern yet. And we don't want to see that. But they have it under control right now. And we're going to keep monitoring and assisting them to keep those numbers down, as we've seen also with some of the others that we did in those early days, Sudbury and District Health Unit, as well as now we're seeing some improvements in the Lambton, as shown by Dr. Brown on his chart, with some of those areas that have seen improvements. And those were in the gray lockdown zone as well. But it tells you that with a concerted, tempered response that fits that community, that the local medical officer of health and their team understand, and working with strong ties with community partners, all this works together to give a great response and to bring it down and hopefully to keep it down.
Last question.
Randall Denley, National Post.
Hi. As you mentioned again today, Dr. Brown, health measures take 2 weeks to come into effect or to show their effect. The current health measures have only been in place for a week. Is it too soon to say that they aren't working or will not work?
I think the rate of growth at this point is so significant that it would be a hard thing to wait this out and see whether or not they had more effect than they've had so far. We've not seen that precipitous drop in mobility. You can see it coming down, but it has not been as sharp as in previous times. and that mobility is a very strong predictor of cases. So I'd say the early indications that we have is that they're not working as well as we might like. And I think it's a very big bet or big risk to see whether or not they would over time.
Follow up, and this is the last question.
So you're recommending that there be an increase or a redirection, I think, of vaccine into high-risk areas. Would it also be your recommendation that existing appointments for lower-risk older people be canceled to provide that supply?
David, do you want to answer that?
So it's a fine balance, and it's made even more complicated with shortage of supply and delays in delivery of vaccine. And that's been perplexing to us and a great challenge to our vaccine task force to try and work this through, because we got to race against time on two things. One, we know, as I said before, still a number of our people in our intensive care units are over the age of 60. And we still want to make headway. And we've seen improvements in our data and our hospitalization and ICUs around the over 80s. We're seeing some improvement now in our 70 to 79s. Getting there, we're trying to make some inroads on the 60 pluses. At the same time, as Dr. Brown's alluded to, we have our high risk, so-called hotspots that we need to move on stringently and get in there and try and get that vaccine program carried out.
Maybe if I could add to that too. So, right from the start, or almost right from the start, the pandemic has been incredibly inequitable in our province, as it has been virtually everywhere else in the world. What we're dealing with now is we have a tool to help fight the pandemic, which is vaccines. We need to use that tool to really correct that inequity. And, if it came down to a hard decision about where to really put those vaccines to get the impact, by any means necessary, I'd say, because it's really critical to get those vaccines where they're going to have the biggest impact.
And I think the point I was trying to make earlier, and this is where it comes into, if there's a high-risk group, even though you say as a X-year-old, I should be next on the list, if there's vaccine diverted to go to that group, I would hope you would have and say, well, we haven't got much in our area. I can do the things because I have the ability to either due to my position or influence, affluence, I can keep myself unexposed. There's some people due to essential work stuff or reasons, they're unable to do that. And I would hope you'll be able to say, well, I'm disappointed that I can't get something right away. At the same time, I understand why that's necessary there, but because I know I'm going to get mine anyways. And we are trying to get both done at the same time. We'll do that as best we can in there. But it's the same as if there was someone who was in more dire straits, say to get seen in the emergency department, you say, I think they should go first. Even though I would like to get seen on my issue, I think they're in more dire straits. So we want that. That's an Ontario civic responsibility type response. We need that right now more than ever. We don't need to be judgmental of each other. We need to be more understanding and try and see the best, because we're in this together, and together we can solve it.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, that happened, guys. So apparently, Mr. Ford's going to be joining us shortly. They honestly should be embarrassed that they say one thing and then do another. Like the bait and switch here that they regularly do, where they tell us it's going to be at 2:30 and then it doesn't happen. Like it shows the level of intelligence that they believe we have, right? Like they just do not care about you guys or me whatsoever. And I mean, every now and then it kind of frustrates me a little bit. And the political theater of the mask on, mask off, if you actually read the studies about masks, like you're rendering it completely ineffective when you're scrunching it up in your hands and you're talking, bro. Like, again, that's actually like, if you believe masks work, you literally like go look at the studies the CDC have done. Like those studies don't include touching the mask all the time. Like if anything, they should have literally just sat there with no masks on the entire time, and then put on the mask once it was finally done, if they really wanted the political theater to mean anything whatsoever. But I mean, it probably just feels good, right? It's good virtue signaling in regards to that. So we're still waiting for our Premier Ford, but presumably he'll come. Again, you guys let me know whether I'm smashing the like or smashing the dislike on this video. And yeah, we'll hopefully get it. And it looks in about 4 minutes. 1, appreciate those of you that were cracking me up in the comments section. And I also want to give a shout out to Corey McKinnon. I appreciate you jumping in the comments section, Corey. Honestly, straight up, I'm mildly disappointed in the number of people that I think have a voice or the ability to speak out against what's going on and choose not to. One of the reasons that financial independence is so, I'm going to stop the screen share here for a sec, but I'll be watching it, guys, and we'll pull it up the moment it starts. But one of the reasons that financial independence is so important, in my opinion, is it allows you to speak out against things. And I don't understand why so many other people in the financial independence, the real estate investing community aren't speaking out against this. Like, there is significant long-term consequences to what's going on here. We don't exist in a vacuum. And again, the precedent being set here that just everything's dangerous or you need to always be panicking or always be scared ABS is just like, that's not good. It's not healthy for anyone. And again, the fact that they're willing to use children as political chips just like blows my mind and frustrates me beyond, like, I don't even have words for it. So, like, one of the things that I'm trying to do to help protect me and mine is I had a conversation with my sister yesterday who has 3 young children. I said, you know what, Katie, I'm done with this shit. I'm just going to start paying you full time to teach your kids. Like this, they're going to keep fucking around with your kids' education for as long as they can. I think that they're creating an entire generation of people that are going to be dependent upon the state, that aren't going to be curious, that are literally taught to only believe what mainstream media tells them. And again, I understand those of you that want to be a little bit more centric than myself on this subject matter. But if we were to look at a communist country and saw the funding that they gave their mainstream media and compared it to what the funding that we give our mainstream media, like, I understand why people have questions. I understand why people believe that the media companies right now don't have the ability to truly ask tough questions because they're scared of being barred from asking future questions. They're scared of losing government support and funding. They're scared of being blacklisted, right? And again, when they're trying to push through new laws that essentially make criticism of the government illegal, like, that should concern all of us, guys. And it's just the political theater we're seeing right now where the liberals create a deal with the bloc in order to get rid of this isn't the right word, but essentially, like, they were looking into the sexual abuse allegations in the military, right? There was an entire investigation going on, and they decide to cancel that. But when one of their MPs has a photo leaked of him being naked on a Zoom call during, the House of Commons, that needs an investigation. But don't worry about the people that were sexually abused potentially in the Canadian military, because we're not really going to gain any points if that's a thing. But that person that dared leak a photo of the House of Commons meeting, they need to be punished, right? Like, again, it doesn't ring true. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most. And, sometimes maybe I get a little frothy at the mouth where I'm quite angry at what's going on. And I understand that doesn't necessarily really help things. But what I do believe is important that every one of us makes it known to others where we stand on this, where our line in the sand is. And you guys have heard me say it before, curfews, COVID passports, those are wrong. Those are my lines in the sand. That is when I know that the government thinks me an enemy of the state. And if you guys want to explore this, government overstepping, overreaching, that's nothing new. I get it. I understand that. But understand that every generation needs to fight back. Every generation needs to try and be the change. And if we just are complacent with all these restrictions, with all these lockdowns, I guarantee you 5-10 years from now, you will not recognize this country. And that's truly what I find concerning. And again, for those of you that are like, if you don't like Canada, just leave it, bro. Understand that at least I'm rich enough I can do that. But I actually don't want to just run away from Canada, right? I'd rather fight and defend it because I believe it's a pretty fucking great country. And in fact, pre-COVID, you watch a bunch of my videos and I go on and on about how I believe Canada's the best country in the world. And again, it's not perfect. No country is and no person is perfect. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for it. And the smallest minority is the minority of one. It's the individual. And if you are not willing to give freedom or agency to the individual, all is lost. And if you'd like to, learn more or explore this in a historical context, yesterday I did a live stream where I read Henry David Thoreau's civil disobedience essay. I believe it's just a wonderful example of how we always need to stay vigilant against the state. And I believe it was Jefferson that said, every generation needs a revolution. I don't see why it would be different this time. So again, we're still waiting for Doug Ford, even though it's 4 p.m. on the dot here. They originally were supposed to do this at 2:30, but they obviously wanted the political theater of having those two talking heads taking their mask on and off again for extended periods of time, just to remind us how important masks are. But the one thing that I guess while we're waiting to find out what the new lockdown restrictions are, for those of you that joined maybe late, let's talk about, again, what's going on with the Grace Life Church in Alberta. So this is from the Justice Center of Canada. I recommend you go check it out. But here's a couple quotes that I think are important and relevant today. After 13 months of violating charter freedoms, the Alberta government refuses to present evidence in support of lockdowns in court. And unfortunately, the courts have permitted the government to delay facing accountability in regard to charter violations, states lawyer John Carpe, president of the Justice Center. Justice delayed is justice denied. It is clear that the government's approach to any challenge to its lockdown policies is to withhold the evidence and delay as long as it can, continues Mr. Carpe. The Alberta government supposedly has enough medical and scientific evidence to shut down hundreds of small businesses, pushing many of them into bankruptcy, and to cancel over 20,000 medically necessary surgeries and to force Albertans into a third lockdown. But when asked to produce this medical and scientific evidence at trial, the Alberta government declares itself incapable of doing so. Like, this should be concerning to all of us. And again, I've mentioned it before, I'm not a particularly religious man, but I find myself on the side with religious men. Thankfully, those tight bond communities that often are religious communities, there's enough common knowledge there where they're often willing to stick up together. And that's why I think it's more important than ever that those of you, the real estate investors, entrepreneurs, those in the financial independence community, you have an obligation. The freedom that allowed you to succeed is being eroded. If that freedom continues to erode, you will not be able to build your empire. Everything that I taught you will be useless if you're not free to interact with each other, if you can't engage both socially and economically without the government's permission. This should be so concerning, guys. And the fact that people want to belittle it, the fact that people want to call us tinfoil hats, people want to call you white supremacists, that's an immediate sign that they don't actually have any facts. They're just trying to hope to shut you up. And we see it across social media at this point in time, right? Whether it's randomly blocking Louder with Crowder, whether it's all the YouTubers that are trying to discuss this. The fact that YouTube would delete a video with the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and a panel of medical experts discussing what's going on should be concerning to you. And it should also just be concerning how little our government cares about us, that they're just going to make us hang out here. But hey, at least you don't we're under lockdown anyways. You shouldn't have anything better to do than wait around and wait for us to tell you what to do. I'm really trying to wait to dislike this video until he starts speaking. But I mean, this delay is making it hard, guys. I'm getting antsy. I really want to smash that dislike button here. But anyways, let's see what's going on in the comments for the time being. But again, I literally do find this insulting to our intelligence. What do we got going on here? Here. Look at you, laugh out loud. If you're scared, stay home. I think, again, I don't want to even frame it as if you're scared, stay home. If you're concerned, you should have the right to stay home. Absolutely. And again, there's ways where we can allow individuals that want to go out into the economy and allow those that don't want to go out into the economy to both succeed, to both work, to both do things. Peter just made a weird face, so I'm curious what's about. Anything that I need to know here?
Someone in the chat said 4:45 now, but that's one person.
Okay, if you guys have heard anything that they're pushing this back to 4:45, let us know. I'll be honest, the longer they drag this out, the more concerned I am that they're actually going to try and pull off a curfew. And you guys have heard me say that's my line in the sand. I'd love to hear, what's your line in the sand? At what point in time is it? Is it when the police come and kick down your door like they do in Britain if you don't quarantine at one of their facilities? Is that your line in the sand, even if they don't have a warrant? Is your line in the sand COVID passports? Is your line in the sand simply military checkpoints city to city or county to county? Where and when is the concern for safety too much in your opinion? I would truly love to know it. Because again, there has to be one somewhere, right? Like you have to have a line in the sand. I can't believe that you would give up everything for safety. I just intellectually can't conceive that. Now, Jesus, if they're going to drag this out to 4:45, I mean, I do have things to do, people. And I imagine you guys at least would rather be binging something. Like, there's probably something on Netflix that's better than this. Corey, how many times did they say the word mobility? Trying to really lock this down. That is concerning. I definitely try and pick up on those buzzwords as well. And so constantly saying that is like, you know, look at this mobility chart. Look at that mobility chart. I love how we're just like, that's cool that you're tracking our data, you know. And again, like, how far do we allow that? Okay, so it looks like a few people are saying Global News now says 45 minutes as their countdown. Also, why does Global News know this before the Premier of Ontario's channel knows this? Like, WTF there. But again, like, what also, like, again, this is probably a small quibble, but will they address the fact that they showed up late? Will they give us an explanation for it? Or is that just part of the political theater? Things are in such dire straits right now, guys, that like it took us an extra 2 hours and 15 minutes to do this. We've been live streaming for an hour and 50 minutes. Good Lord. Okay. Yeah, you guys let me know what your thoughts, what your opinions are in the comment section. We were originally going to do a live at 5 p.m. where we were going to talk about mortgages and financing and real estate and buying houses in Bitcoin. I'll have to check in with the rest of the guys and see whether we'll push it back, or maybe we'll even get them to join us on the live stream, and we can just chat if Mr. Ford's going to drag his feet. In the meantime, I'm going to show you guys some Twitter accounts I think you should be following, because again, I'm concerned by where some people get their information and where others aren't digging deeper. If you want to follow anything to do with housing and stuff like that, particularly in Vancouver, I think Steve's a great source there, but he's not particularly pro or against COVID from what I've seen. I really appreciate Ted Cruz these days. I didn't necessarily appreciate him that much years ago, but to see him now be willing not to wear a mask because he was vaccinated, I'm happy to see things like that, right? Either vaccines work or they don't work. Like this idea that just do everything all the time because reasons is concerning, because again, like, what's the logic? What's the rationale? When do we know we get to go back to normal? That's all I think we really want, is to know. And they just never give us real benchmarks. And that's the most concerning thing, in my opinion. If you guys aren't following Roman Baber, I believe that you have a duty, if you enjoyed anything that we've chatted about on my channel, because he was willing to put himself in what appears to be a relatively vulnerable position by leaving Doug Ford's cabinet, right? Understand that I have mad respect for individuals that are willing to risk real things for their principles. And that's not easy, right? Like, going against the grain right now is not easy. And understand, even things like this come with risks. I put myself at risk of having YouTube and Facebook delete my accounts. I've got small influencer friends that have their accounts banned or paused or deleted all the time. And again, their content isn't that much different than mine. We try and walk a very fine line here where I don't think they can get me, but again, I don't even really know that. And like, what's scared, like, straight up, actually, I'm going to stop the screen share here. So I'll get a little bit vulnerable here for a second, guys. I would even be more outspoken if I wasn't scared of consequences. I would even be more crazy on my YouTube channel if it wasn't for the fact that, how many people work on the social mediation team now?
10.
So we've got 10 people that work mostly full-time. A couple of them might be part-time, but literally just work on my social media team. So they create the content here. They create all that stuff. Understand, like, I actually lose a little bit of money right now on this business, but I'm cool with that because I believe that, one, long-term, this is a smart investment, but two, what we're doing here is actually important. But I am scared. I would hate to lose all the money that this generates, and most of it's not through YouTube revenue, because good Lord, YouTube demonetizes most of our videos these days, but part of it is through sponsorships, right? So we've got realtors that come on, we've got mortgage brokers, we've got lawyers, we've got contractors that come on, and that helps support this entire little ecosystem here. And we're literally in the process right now of setting up a separate YouTube channel where Matt can really go off the rails and share his opinions without risk, because right now, I can't be as outspoken as I'd like. I'm scared to share some things that I've seen like Crowder get deleted for, or that I've seen like Mark from Canadian Poly get in trouble for, and things of that nature, because there's real consequences to this. This isn't some little makeup game. And this is where the discussion of the public square is so important. This is why it's so critical that we understand that Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all these companies being able to have both the privileges of the press and editorialship, as well as the privileges of a utility like a phone company, is terrible, is wrong. It allows them to only censor what they feel like, rather than either being held up to a certain standard or being a utility and just letting everything run amok on their networks. Again, Telus, AT&T, Bell, they're not held responsible if I make a crazy ass phone call or text message to you on their network. And the same holds true for social media companies. But what that means is that utility, the phone company, isn't able just to delete my text or block me from contacting other people just arbitrarily. However, social media companies are able to do that because of their terms of service. And so we find ourselves in this strange place where the public sphere, the public square has developed online on social media on these platforms, and they're given both privileges and always the benefit of the doubt. And this truly is concerning in my opinion. So yeah, anyways, we still have no Doug Ford. We're definitely going to be 4:45. It looks like at this point, guys. Oh, actually shit. Now he's coming out. How the fuck does this work? Okay. We're getting Doug Ford up here now. What are the rules?
Well, good afternoon. I've never shied away from telling you the brutal, honest truth. Never shied away from tough decisions. And today, I'm here to do just that. My friends, we're losing the battle between the variants and vaccines. The pace of our vaccine supply has not kept up with the spread of the new COVID variants. We are on our heels. But if we dig in, remain steadfast, we can turn this around. We're down, but no means are we out. In the last few weeks, you've seen me up here every day. We've been ringing the alarm bells for weeks. We pulled the emergency brake for the entire province. We shut down our schools. Most of the province has been in some form of lockdown since last fall. We announced a second stay-at-home order for all of Ontario. And as we saw in the modeling, these actions have slowed the spread. They've reduced mobility and avoided the worst case. But we have to do more. The reality is there are few options left. We have implemented the strictest measures in all of North America. And the difficult truth is, every public health measure we have left comes with a massive cost to people and their lives. But we have never shied away from doing what's necessary. And it comes down to three things: limiting mobility, enforcing the rules, and getting vaccines into arms. And as your premier, it falls on me to make the difficult choices. It falls on me to do what's necessary. So effective immediately, we're extending the emergency declaration and prolonging the stay-at-home order province-wide for an additional 2 weeks, for a total of 6 weeks. Outdoor gatherings will now be strictly limited to members of your own household only. Anyone who lives alone can join with one other household. We'll be closing all non-essential construction. We're restricting all outdoor recreational amenities, such as golf courses, basketball courts, soccer fields, and playgrounds. We're reducing capacity in big box retail even further to 25%. Beginning on Monday, places of worship will be capped at a maximum of 10 people indoors. To get ahead of the variants that are plaguing Western Canada, beginning Monday, we're setting up checkpoints at all interprovincial borders. We'll be limiting access to border crossings between Ontario and the provinces of Manitoba and Quebec, with exceptions such as work, medical care, or transportation of goods. And we're calling on the federal government to immediately tighten up our international borders. We're currently facing the devastating consequences of COVID variants that entered Canada through our borders at the start of this year. We need to do more to stop other, even deadlier variants from getting into Canada and causing more havoc. That means limiting air travel, tightening up our US border, and addressing the countless issues we're seeing with testing and quarantining when people fly into our country. Every week, over 36,000 people from all over the world come through Pearson International Airport. The variants that are causing this inferno, they got in through our borders. And more needs to be done right now. For our part, we are taking decisive action on the ground to dramatically step up enforcement. We have made the difficult but necessary decision to give police and bylaw officers special authorities to enforce public health measures for the duration of the stay-at-home order. I know that the majority of Ontario residents are doing the right thing. They're following the rules, keeping each other safe. But we need to step up enforcement. We need to focus on those who are deliberately putting others at risk by ignoring the stay-at-home order. Those gathering in large groups, continuing to put themselves and others at risk. So understand the restrictions will be strongly enforced because they must be. We know that when they're followed, these measures work. They reduce mobility and they do flatten the curve. We know this because we've seen them work before. What we need now is for everyone to follow these rules. These variants are infecting and killing younger people every day. We need more time to continue vaccinations to priority populations because getting needles in arms will help put this pandemic behind us. Through no fault of their own, certain communities are waging a bigger battle than others. 20% of the province has 80% of cases right now. We need to use the limited vaccines we have to focus on the inferno because we will all benefit from getting these areas under control. That's why we're increasing vaccine supply to hotspots by 25%. And we're pressing the federal government to get us those shipments. Every vaccine we receive goes into an arm. Every single one is spoken for. We have seen clinics close and turn people away because we don't have the supply we need. And just today, we learned about a further Moderna delay. And we clearly saw in the modeling, more vaccines means fewer cases. More vaccines mean fewer hospitalizations. And more vaccines means we get out of this sooner. So if there's anything at all the federal government can do right now to get us more vaccines, we need to get them now. I can't emphasize that enough. We need the vaccines now. In the meantime, we're taking immediate action to build unprecedented capacity in our hospitals. We're moving forward with our emergency plan to add another 700 to 1,000 new beds. We don't want to have use this new capacity, but I want the people of Ontario to rest assured it is there if we need it. And it's been remarkable watching our healthcare heroes fighting on the front lines, and I want them to know that more help is coming. And each of you have the most important role to play. Please stay home, follow the rules, and get your vaccine as soon as you're eligible. My friends, you have my word. We will not rest until this virus is beaten. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll pass it over to Ministralia.
Thank you, Premier. Like many provinces across Canada and jurisdictions around the world, Ontario is in the midst of the third wave of COVID-19. And as we've seen, this wave is different. Over the last few weeks, key health indicators have continued to worsen. COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and intensive care unit occupancy are at their highest levels since the start of the pandemic. Variant cases, which are transmitted more quickly and easily, continue to rise, putting even more lives at risk. And while we continue to use every resource at our disposal to support our hospitals and maximize health system capacity, our hospitals are being hit harder than ever. In 1 week, the number of COVID-19 hospitalizations has increased by almost 30%, and there are about 150 more patients in our intensive care units, bringing the total to 701 intensive care unit patients with COVID-related critical illnesses. The latest projections released show that admissions to ICUs are projected to rise to over 1,000 patients by the end of the month. And today's highly concerning modeling is very clear that unless further actions are taken, case rates will continue to rise, pushing our hospitals to the brink. Our response needs to be stronger because our opponent, the variants, are that much stronger. That is why we are taking immediate action to respond to the ongoing threats to the health and safety of Ontarians. Effective Saturday, April 17th at 12:01 a.m., all outdoor social gatherings and organized public events will be prohibited except for members of the same household or members of a household and one other person from outside that household who lives alone. All non-essential workplaces in the construction sector will be closed, with only essential construction permitted to operate. Capacity limits for in-person shopping in all retail settings where in-person shopping is permitted, including supermarkets, grocery stores, convenience stores, and stores that primarily sell food and pharmaceutical products, will be limited to 25% capacity. All outdoor recreational amenities, such as golf courses, basketball courts, and playgrounds, will be closed. In addition, effective Monday, April 19th at 12:01 a.m., capacity at weddings, funerals, and religious services will be limited to 10 people indoors or outdoors. Drive-in services will be permitted. All other public health and workplace safety measures for non-essential retail under the province-wide emergency brake will continue to apply. We know the way out of the pandemic is vaccines. That's why we are taking further action to support hotspot communities and focus on getting the vaccines to those who are most at risk. As part of phase 2 of our government's COVID-19 vaccine distribution plan, we are committed to dedicating 25% of future vaccine allocations to the 13 public health regions with historic and ongoing high rates of death, hospitalization, and COVID-19 transmission. While the greatest challenge to Ontario's vaccine rollout remains a stable and reliable supply of vaccines from the federal government, we will continue to focus our vaccination efforts on those most at risk, working with our valued community partners and local public health units to mobilize every channel and deliver vaccines as quickly as possible. All Health Canada approved COVID-19 vaccines are safe, they're effective, and I strongly encourage everyone to sign up to receive the vaccine when it's your turn. I know it's been a longer winter, but now our summer is at risk. I am asking all Ontarians to please stay home to stop the third wave from threatening our healthcare system and the health of thousands of Ontarians. We may not feel it, but brighter days are ahead, They may not come as fast as we would like, but we will get there. And it will take a collective effort from all of us. Thank you. And I'd now like to hand it over to the Solicitor General.
Thank you, Minister Elliott. As both the Premier and Minister Elliott stated, COVID-19 projections are moving in a dangerous direction across Ontario. With our hospital system experiencing devastating pressures as a result of sharp upward trends in hospitalization and in intensive care unit capacities, it is essential that people respect the stay-at-home order and follow public health measures. This is a critical moment in Ontario's response to this deadly virus, and every single person in Ontario has an important role in protecting our communities. Unfortunately, some people continue to attend gatherings and leave their homes for non-essential reasons. As a government, it is our responsibility to take action to address non-compliance and prevent further transmission of COVID-19. That is why, after consulting with public health experts, we have made the deliberate decision to temporarily enhance police officers' authority for the duration of the stay-at-home order. Moving forward, police will have the authority to require any individual who is not in a place of residence to, first, provide their purpose for not being at home and provide their home address. Police will also have the authority to stop a vehicle to inquire about
This
an
is
individual's
fucking
reasons
terrible.
for leaving their residence. I cannot stress this enough.
Papers,
It is
please.
imperative that everyone limit their trips outside of the home to permitted purposes only, such as going to the grocery store or pharmacy, medical appointments, outdoor exercise, or for work that cannot be done remotely. We know that stay-at-home orders work. We've seen their success in slowing down the spread of the virus and saving lives. It is also critical that we protect against COVID-19 variants coming into Ontario through non-essential travel. That is why, effective April 19th at 12:01 a.m., we are restricting travel into Ontario from the provinces of Manitoba and Quebec, with the exception purposes such as work, medical care, transportation of goods, and exercising Indigenous treaty rights. Should an individual not have a valid reason to enter Ontario, they will be turned back. These are tough but necessary measures.
These
to
are
help us
evil
overcome
measures.
This health crisis. We all want to get back to normal, but we can't get there without all doing everything we can right now to stop the rapid spread of COVID-19. Together, we can make a difference to protect our loved ones and our communities. Please stay home, stay safe. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Minister McNaughton.
Good afternoon. As we continue our fight to defeat this deadly virus, it's crucial that we do everything possible to keep workers safe. Since the start of this pandemic, we've now done over 46,000 COVID-19 related inspections, issued more than 49,000 orders, and stopped unsafe work 87 times. Our efforts have been laser focused on where they are needed the most, with blitzes in hotspot regions targeting hundreds of big box stores, factories, and warehouses. In order to help reduce spread, we are shutting down some non-essential construction like shopping malls, hotels, and office towers. However, there are still projects that are critical to our health, like building our homes, our hospitals, assessment centers, and long-term care homes, and we need to ensure those on these sites are being kept safe. Starting today, over 200 inspectors are visiting more than 1,300 construction sites over the next 4 weeks to ensure public health measures are in place. Travel to and from work has been a major contributor to the spread of this deadly virus. For that reason, we have repeatedly asked people who can work from home to do so. The sad reality is more and more people are being asked to go into the office. This cannot continue. That is why our inspectors will be visiting law offices, accounting firms, and other workplaces over the coming days and weeks.
This is
To make
insane.
sure that those inside
This
and
is
on-site
truly
are protected
ridiculous.
and following the COVID-19 safety requirements. I cannot stress enough to employers, if your staff can work from home, they must work from home. And our inspectors will also be ensuring that those who absolutely must come to work are strictly following the public health measures. For our employers and employees, take note, this is your last warning. Thank you and stay safe, everyone.
We'll go to the phone line for questions. First question, please.
From Randy Rath at Sage TV.
Hi, Randy.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my question. I'm wondering about these new police powers to just randomly stop someone walking down the street or to pull over a car. What happens if a person refuses to answer the police questions?
Pass that to the Solicitor General.
Thank you. That was a good question.
So by issuing these new additional enforcement measures, it allows police officers to ask the person why they are not at their place of residence and what their place of residence is. And specifically to your question, if you are not willing to comply, then you are breaking the law. And there is an option for the police officer to issue a ticket. Thank you.
Follow up?
The first person that gets one of those tickets, send me a DM on Instagram. I will pay it for you if you send it to me, because I look forward to framing it. Because this is
regulations.
This needs to be remembered.
And having a party in their yard, that sort of thing. Should people call police on their neighbors?
So in terms of the ticket cost, that of course is set by the Chief Justice. Currently, if you break an order under the EMCPA, then it is $750, as I understand it. In terms of people calling to snitch, to inform, look, we all have a personal responsibility, and I would hope that the vast majority of us would take that personal responsibility seriously. When we see the ICU numbers rise, I would hope that people would take a second thought and consider their neighbors, consider those healthcare workers who have been working incredibly hard over the past 12 years. I'm never going to encourage people to inundate the bylaw enforcement or police departments with calls, but if it means saving lives, then I think we have to think about what your social responsibilities are as an individual to make sure that you don't empower other people and invite a whole bunch of individuals to your home. Thank you.
Next question.
From Natasha McDonald at Radio Canada.
Hi, Natasha.
Hi, Premier. Should the federal government toss the per capita approach and instead distribute more vaccines to the hardest hit regions like the GTA?
Well, what we need from the federal government, Natasha, we just need more supply. This isn't a capacity issue, it's a supply issue. And I've been saying that right from day one. I'm sure they're working hard for the supply, but we need them to double down their efforts, and we need them as well to push NACI, the decision on AstraZeneca. Folks, you look at the UK right now, they had less cases than all of Ontario. They knocked the age down to 30 years of age with AstraZeneca. And if you have an opportunity to get AstraZeneca or Moderna or Pfizer, do it. But I just want to show you a chart, what this, I don't know if you can zoom in, Jamie, or not. But this is what Dr. Brown showed. This is at 100,000, and it just escalates up to 30,000 cases compared to the green lines with tough restrictions. It's a game changer. We have the capacity to do 300,000 tests. We just don't have the supply. And we all know there's one way of getting out of this. To follow the protocols, that's an automatic. But if we continue just getting dribs and drabs and missing Moderna shipments and so on and so forth, we aren't getting out of this. More people are going to die. More people are going to be in the ICUs. But if we can ramp it up to 300,000 a day, then again, you will see the drastic. So this is 100,000 up there. this is if you do 300,000. It's night and day. We're going to have a summer. We're going to open up businesses. We're going to be able to open up restaurants and bars and get the kids back in school. It all comes down to one thing, the supply of vaccines. Simple as that.
Follow up?
Ontario asked for help, and Alberta and Saskatchewan aren't sending healthcare workers to Ontario. Quebec still hasn't decided. If not enough help comes from within Canada, is there a possibility that Ontario will have to turn to the U.S. to help with staffing our ICUs? How bad is the situation?
Well, before I pass to the Minister of Health, I have reached out to all the premiers, and we're a close group of premiers. I can assure you that. And I know if there's anything they can do, they will do for us. You know, it goes back to the maritime provinces helping out on the last situation. They were shipping tractor trailer loads of meals over the hospital, you know, sending us antigen, sending us anything we can. They're a phenomenal group of premiers. Look what's happening out in BC with Premier Horgan. He's getting it hard with a Brazilian variant. This is the reason, folks. We need to tighten up our borders. I'm first to welcome everyone around the world, but when we see 36,000 people coming in, and some people, oh, it's only 1.8%. Well, let me tell you something. If we first pushed getting the testing done, even though it's not our jurisdiction, and they've taken over, 2,200 people, you know, were tested positive coming into our country that I know of right now. And it doesn't take 2,200 people to spread these variants. You know, it takes 5 people, 4 people. You saw what happened out in the long-term care home in Barrie when one person went in a long-term care home. You know, it spread like wildfire. And these variants, I can assure you, aren't swimming across the ocean by themselves. They're being brought in. We need to tighten up the borders. We're going to lock down our borders in Ontario for the first time in recent memory that I could ever remember. And now the federal government needs to step up, and they need to tighten up these borders like we've never seen before. We have to make sure we control the variants coming into our country. And I'll pass it over to the Minister of Health.
Well, yes, we have requested assistance from our provincial and territorial partners, but the reality is, as the Premier indicated, we know that several of the Western provinces are being very hard hit by the variants, particularly the Brazilian variant. The most likely possibility of assistance is to come from the maritime provinces, which have the Atlantic bubble and have not been as hard hit as Ontario has, or Western provinces. But we're also building capacity internally within our hospitals. We've got the physical capacity of having the beds. We've already added over 3,400 beds to our capacity since this time last year, which is the equivalent of 6 new community-sized hospitals. But of course, we also need the health human resources to go along with that. One of the ways that we're going to increase capacity in that respect is by ramping down the surgeries and procedures that had been scheduled, so that those personnel that are already in our hospitals will now be able to care for COVID patients. But we're also extending our student extern program to students who are in their final years of nursing programs to be able to come in and work under supervision. We are working with having some retired nurses being able to come back and dealing with having them requalified so that they can practice as well. And we are also looking at some international jurisdictions as well to bring in the several thousand more nurses, respiratory therapists, and anesthesia assistants.
And just going back to our premiers, you know, I know they would do anything to help the people of Ontario, just because their capacity right now, you know, they're going to be maxing out, and I'm sure Quebec is as well. But again, I always say I love the Maritimers. I love the East Coasters. Do you know who's been an absolute champion? They all have been, by the way, but Dr. Andrew Furey, Premier Furey, the new Premier of Newfoundland. I'll tell you, the people in Newfoundland, I love you. I love all the East Coasters, and he has called me more than anyone. He is messaging me How can I help you? He's trying to put teams in a small place like Newfoundland. This is, they wear their heart on their sleeves out there. He's putting some professional healthcare workers together. He says it might not be much because we aren't that large, but it's just the effort and the caring, coming together right across the country. And I'll tell you, when we get through this, I'm taking a trip out to the East Coast and thanking all the maritime provinces. I'm so grateful, very grateful. Andrew, thank you.
Next question.
From Jeff Gray at the Globe and Mail.
Hi, Jeff.
Oh, hi, Premier. I wanted to ask, I guess, first about the ICUs. Dr. Brown's numbers show that no matter what changes are made to the public health measures, those ICUs are going to hit levels that I think we all thought were unimaginable years, in past months, up to 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and there's no way to reverse that ship in the short term. Do you regret or do you acknowledge that it would have been, as some critics have said, a much better idea to bring in these tough, strong measures you're doing now weeks earlier to keep that number from cresting up so high?
No, you know something, that wouldn't have stopped it. And let me tell you what we have done. For all the way back to the fall, we have parts of this province that have been in gray lockdown. We closed the entire province. We closed the schools twice. We've increased healthcare. Let me go back to the beginning. We scrambled everywhere when this first happened over a year ago. We didn't have any PPEs here. We put a whole system of PPEs together. Now we're self-sufficient. There was no testing in place at all. Now we're number one in North America on testing. We strengthened our border along with the testing. Folks, it's like we are all, not me, I'm not worried about myself. It's like we've all been pushing this boulder up a mountain. And until we have more vaccines, we need stricter measures. I'm gonna pass it over to Dr. Williams, but let me reassure you, the measures, after talking to Dr. Brown, if we didn't take the tighter measures that we have over the last couple of weeks, the cases would be skyrocketing. So because we did act decisively, the cases aren't where they might have been. They're high, but nothing compared to what the worst case scenario is. Like, folks, we have put everything on the field now, everything. Now we need the cooperation, which we have, vast majority, probably 90% of the population has been working their backs off. But we have some folks. I took a drive, just to check out the area down here. You go by the parks, and it's like business as usual. I just don't understand it. I've been up here ringing the alarm bells. Again, 90% of the people are following, and I'm so grateful for that. But some people are putting everyone else at risk. I'll pass it to Dr. Williams.
So further to what the Premier has said and further to our presser that I did with Dr. Brown a couple of hours ago, the aspect you're asking about the projection of the ICU capacity, as they have pointed out to us, that has set in line with the number of cases we've seen before. So it's not that changeable in the next few weeks because it is a delayed metric in there. I gave an example that when they gave us their modeling 3 weeks ago, they said by now we would be at 600 to 700 ICU beds. That's where we are today. 2 weeks ago, they said you're still going to be at 600 to 700. And today they predicted we are at 600 to 700. So some of those data points move quicker. 3 weeks ago, they said we would max out at 3,000 cases a day. And then 2 weeks ago, they said we'd max out with our measures at 2,800. They've had to change that because the data changes. The information around the variants of concern changes because the way it's handled and it's moving its way through. That's what we want from our modelers. They got to be able to update and change the analytics. But some things move quickly and some things don't. And so their projection is that we will head up towards 1,000 ICU bed occupancy in the next couple of weeks. Is probably the direction it's going to head in because that's already in motion already starting 2 or 3 weeks ago in that sense. So we are following all the directions, as the Premier noted. When they asked us back on April 1st to bring in stronger measures, 2 days later we did. When they asked us a week ago to bring in stay at home, we did. And today we're taking some more steps, and we're being advised by them as well as our public health measures table, and moving to work with the public to bring about what we need is strong public health measures to bend the curve on this one yet again. I know we can do it. And I'm confident that Ontarians together, we can make this happen.
Follow-up?
And to follow up maybe to the Premier or the Minister of Health and Dr. Williams, if you could explain a bit about, for weeks we've heard people saying that it is less risky to be outside, to go to a park or to do exercise, whatever. And now we're hearing that playgrounds and outdoor parks are going to be.
Jeff, could you just repeat your question? You're a little unclear.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm having trouble with my phone today. Sorry about that. Just want to ask the question about outdoors. There have been lots of people saying that outdoor activities were safer. And for weeks, people have said that that's actually a good thing to do. Get outside. People need to get outside. But now these new measures are going to clamp down on that. Can you explain why that move is being taken? Playgrounds and so on. There's nothing else for a lot of people to do, and we were led to believe that outdoors was safer.
Yeah. I'm not, and we as a group are not saying don't take a walk around, and get some exercise. But Jeff, have you ever went by some of these parks? The parks are packed. But I'm going to pass.
Have you seen these people having fun? I just cannot stand it.
Well, generally speaking, yes, it is better to be outdoors and indoors. The variants don't spread as quickly, but the problem is that many people are outdoors in larger groups, and they're not following those public health measures like wearing a mask, keeping physical distance, and so on. That's how we're seeing this increased transmission. So yes, please go ahead, go outside and exercise. People need to walk their dogs, go out and do that, but don't do it in groups other than members of your household, and still keep following public health measures that are so important for all of us to reduce transmission.
Next question.
From Rob Ferguson at the Toronto Star.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Premier. This is the third time in 3 weeks you've increased restrictions after 2 months of warnings from the public, from Steiny Brown and the science table not to ease measures too much. Why are you convinced this is enough? Because I heard you say just a few minutes ago that everything is on the field now, but Amazon warehouse is still open without reduced staff capacity. And we've got, in places like that where essential workers are catching the virus and taking it home and infecting other members of their households.
Well, again, Rob, we're have that three-prong approach: limiting mobility, targeting areas like the Amazons, getting in there in the hot areas. 20% of the areas represent 80% of the cases. So we're having mobile units to go into places like the Amazons, like other large employers in the hot areas. And we're also handing out the rapid tests. I think we've handed in excess of over 3 million. It's probably higher by now. We're doing everything possible to make sure that we test people. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Williams, and he can run through again what we've done over the last few weeks, I should say.
So Rob, as I just said before, we have been following in stride with that. As the Premier noted, we've had restrictions in Ontario in place with our framework all fall, and enhancing that with a number of places in lockdown in various levels since before Christmas and continuing. So we continue to ramp up as necessary and doing it at the right time in the right way. We've been following, as I noted, back 3 weeks ago, as someone has asked already, the science table is saying you need to be some more effort to lock down, and we did that. We went province-wide, and they said, but a lot more activity can take place outdoors. And we followed that and tried to do that. And we found, as Minister Elliott has alluded to, people were not adhering to the public health measures, because the strength of our measures is very important that the people take it as seriously as we do. So strong measures require strong cooperation and strong participation, and we need that. And I've been concerned that over the while, as we put those in, some people have become, I'd say, more complacent. Nevertheless, there's a large part of our population who are doing the right thing every day, day in and day out. And I applaud them for that. Those who have started to let that slide have to get back in focus again and are finding out, unfortunately for some, that where they thought there was not an issue, now with the new variants, it is causing much harm in their family and personally, and they have to really focus in on this and stick to the measures that we're bringing in today. And we're following the direction again in phase with what the science table has been advising.
Yeah, Rob, I just want to reiterate about the importance of health and safety for every single worker out there. We've spared no expense to protect workers. That's why we've done nearly 47,000 workplace inspections to date, more than 20,000 since January the 1st. And as I said earlier, Rob, we've now shut down 87 unsafe workplaces and job sites, about 20 in the last couple of weeks. So to every employer out there, you know the rules. We have a zero tolerance approach in every type of workplace. Employers and employees must follow these rules.
Follow up?
Okay, thanks everyone and Monty for that. Changing tack to the travel restrictions on the borders with the boundaries, with Manitoba and Quebec. You mentioned, Premier, that you want to stop the variants, some of these other variants from getting in from Western Canada. And I'm wondering, do you honestly think more people are driving into Ontario from the West than flying? Because I would venture that there's probably lots of flights arriving every day from Vancouver, Calgary, Regina, Winnipeg, places like that, far more than people that are driving in. And aren't they the bigger threat?
Yeah, Rob, I agree with you 100%. But in saying that, I'm sure the people don't want, the other provinces don't want people from Ontario traveling. I'll give you one example. I know of someone that, flew out, was it last week, to Vancouver, stayed a couple of days and flew back. That's what we're trying to avoid, folks. We have to lock it down on the province. That's not our jurisdiction. That's the federal government's jurisdiction, air travel. And I'm asking them to tighten up our borders coming from all around the world. But we need to do the same interprovincial. And I'll pass this over to the Solicitor General.
So as you know, federal aviation is controlled by the Canadian government. We were successful in initially setting up testing for international travelers at Pearson. Now the federal government has taken over that responsibility, and we are asking respectfully, please don't just do international travelers that are coming into Pearson. Do domestic travelers, do US travelers. We have to test people when they are coming into Ontario to make sure that our citizens are protected. And frankly, they can get the protection if they need to self-isolate for 14 days. In terms of the actual borders between Manitoba and Quebec, there are 43 different road pathways through Quebec and Manitoba, and we want to check those visitors. Why are you coming into Ontario at this time? Is it necessary for medical, personal, and work reasons? And if it's not, respectfully, you need to turn away until we deal with the variants, until we get sufficient vaccines to make sure that our citizens are protected. Thank you.
And just one more thing, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this before. Do you know who our heroes are too? Along with the firefighters, paramedics, our police, our Canadian Border Protection Officers. No one talks about them. Imagine being there every day and having 36,000 people come to you in a week, and they need to be protected too. They're on the front lines, the first of the front line to protect our country. So I want to say to the Canadian Customs officers, I have your backs. You guys are champions, and they need to be protected. And if the federal government doesn't get them vaccinated, we need to, because they're facing really tough challenges with people coming from all over the world, face to face, literally. So I got to give a shout out to our customs officers. I have your back, and we'll make sure one way or another we'll get you vaccinated, because they're a priority, essential service.
Last question.
From Alison Martell at Reuters.
Thank you.
Hi, Alison.
So it looks at this point all but certain that Ontario will still soon have more critically ill COVID patients than ICU beds. That means people will have heart attacks, they will be hit by cars, they will catch COVID at work, and they will receive substandard care, or maybe only limited care to keep them comfortable while they die. Why not close some non-essential manufacturing and distribution workplaces now and reduce that death toll?
Okay. You know something? When we talk about the non-essential manufacturing, you look at the supply chain. The supply chain is so deep. You know, you can pick one and not the other. The supply chain is deep. And you know who I wish who was here is Vic Fideli. He was talking about the forestry. You know, someone said, why don't you close down the forestry? There's a product in the forestry that is in aspirins, in dozens and dozens of different products. And, you know, someone that makes a light switch. I could go on and on and on. What we need to do, I'll tell you what we need to do. First of all, we need to make sure the mobility stops. We have to make sure that we get the vaccines into people's arms. We need to make sure that we enforce the stay-at-home order. It works, folks. That's what we need. We need that more than anything. The bottom line is, this is the bottom line. Would we be in this position if we were getting 300,000 vaccines back in February, like the rest of the world? The answer is absolutely not. We wouldn't be facing the crisis with ICU. We wouldn't be having shutdowns. We wouldn't have the schools shut down. We need the vaccines. And, you know, whatever, hook by crook, whatever, the feds need to get us vaccines. Bottom line.
Follow up?
Other countries and other provinces have closed some manufacturing workplaces during surges. Many major manufacturing workplaces closed voluntarily during the first wave. Is there not a single item Ontario makes or distributes that can wait a month?
Pass it over to the Minister of Labour.
Look, we're protecting the health and safety of every single worker. There's millions of people that have worked throughout this pandemic to ensure that we have food on our plates, that we have those vital pharmaceutical supplies that we need. We're going to continue to stand with every single worker out there. That's why we're doing hundreds of inspections every day in the province. That's why we're focusing on Peel and Halton regions and in the GTA to get into those warehouses and distribution centers and factories to protect every worker. And again, there's no excuses for employers. They know exactly what they need to be doing. We put up hundreds of resources, posters, tip sheets, videos, webinars at ontario.ca/COVID safety in multiple languages. And if any worker out there feels unsafe, they can call our ministry and we'll investigate at 877-202-0008. But we're going to continue every single day to ensure that workplaces are safe for workers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe weekend. God bless. We'll get through this, I promise you.
All right. Well, that happened. Okay, I'm going to try and be relatively concise and to the point here, guys. If you didn't see, I was sharing, while this was coming up, I realized that I'm going to get my ass banned off of YouTube pretty soon if I keep up this. So we set up a new channel called Matt McKeever Unfiltered. Want to encourage you guys, if you want to continue to follow along with this stuff, that's going to be the channel where I'm likely going to post a lot of this. And it's going to be unfiltered. But a few things that I do want to say is, one, I understand, and yeah, I'm going to try and go through this. So obviously that's complete bullshit. It is what it is. But what I want to say is, if you're a police officer, if you're an inspector, if you're a bylaw officer, you are in a difficult position right now, and I do not envy you. However, you know what? It's been a long 13 months for you. I think you need a stress leave if they're going to ask you to enforce any more bullshit like this. So if they put you on the, stopping people in the park job, if that's your role for the day, call in sick. Take a mental health day. Do whatever you do, you. But if you're enforcing this stuff, following orders, I don't know if that's a good enough excuse at this point in time. That's just my opinion. I know it's not going to be popular. Then beyond that, what I do want to talk to you guys about is we need some sort of symbol or common knowledge here. I'm proposing literally like, don't snitch, keep calm. And I love Dylan's added there, get rich. Don't snitch, keep calm, get rich. We're literally, I don't know, we'll maybe like write it on a bed sheet or something and put it over our garage door. But I literally want to do something to mark my house, to let my neighbors know that I'm not a little bitch that's going to snitch on them if they happen to have a family member over, or if they happen to have someone stop by. In fact, literally every morning I look out my window. We've got like this nice little like porch thing that walks out of the second story living room. And anyways, I always love looking out that window and seeing strange vehicles on the streets, strange vehicles in my neighbors' laneways. It always just does my heart a little good to remind me that we're not all sheep, that not everyone's drank all the Kool-Aid. But I think that that is important. And then finally, you guys have heard me talking about this before, but your government does not respect you whatsoever. You are cattle or chattel to them. Again, like a farmer can just inject its cattle with whatever it wants. Same with, in this case, the government and you. And so that police officer right now that might be feeling conflicted about whether he has to write a COVID ticket or whether he should take a mental sick day, the reason he's conflicted is because he's coupled to the system. It's because he needs that job. He needs that income. And especially right now, where else are you going to go get a job when almost all jobs are outlawed, right? So I understand that. What we all need to do is do our best to get our financial house in order. What you need to do is try and decouple to whatever degree you can from the system. You don't have any money. You're pissed off at me for telling you to buy Bitcoin. Start a garden, right? Get your cost of food lower. Get a roommate, right? If you're living alone, house hack, rent hack, do whatever you can to get your financial house in order, and then start stacking sats. Start buying Bitcoin. And in fact, I'm going to start, I haven't even figured this out yet. I literally just wrote it down while this bullshit was going on. We're going to put together a one-day conference for free. I'm literally just going to teach. I'm going to have experts come on, some of my Bitcoin friends and some people I've been listening to. And we'll have some experts on Bitcoin come and talk. We'll have some safety experts as well, talking about how to protect yourself, how to set up, basic things like Tor or VPN, how to really protect your coins and your keys, because you need to start becoming your own bank. This system is so corrupt. It's so rotten to the core that I don't see how we get out of this. I don't see how we necessarily fix it. That's not to say you shouldn't fight it. You should fight it in whatever way you feel comfortable fighting it. Whether that's just thought crime right now, whether that's going for the dangerous activity of a walk, whatever you're comfortable doing, I encourage you to represent the change you want to see in Ontario and Canada. But you also need to decouple from the system. If all your money's in their system, if they control every asset you own, it is very difficult to truly feel free to speak out. And that's why I feel a special privilege having built up my real estate portfolio, having built up these businesses where I'm able to have these conversations. But like I said earlier in the live stream, I do still have my own concerns, right? I'm scared of getting this channel banned because that would cost me a bunch of money, but it would probably cost my team some jobs, at least temporarily, or I would have to bail it out for 6 months or a year till we built it back up. And that's assuming we could build it back up. It's actually a lot of fucking work building these social media followings, it turns out, or at least for me it is when you're not good at it. But anyways, what I want to encourage you guys to do is get your financial house in order. Start learning about Bitcoin. No other shitcoins, no other altcoins. Forget Dogecoin. Start researching Bitcoin. Go read the white paper. Get the Bitcoin standard and pay attention. We're going to put together a big live event because we need to help Canadians. I need to help the right Canadians get into Bitcoin, ones that actually want to see freedom, independence, personal agency, liberty, and all the wonderful things that I think the age of reason and Western democracy brought us. And so it's time to stand up. It's time to be the change. It's time to let people know, don't snitch, keep calm, get rich, get control of your shit, because they sure as hell just want you to become dependent and scared at all times. That's not healthy. That's not good. And like this shit just frustrates me to no end. So what I want to end off here with, guys, is something that's at least going to make me feel less bad. So actually, before I do that, though, Again, reminder, this is the new YouTube channel. Looks like we've got 15 subs already, so appreciate the 15 or 37 of you that have subscribed. So again, please go find it. There's no content there right now. We literally made it like, if we go to the About section, you're going to see we joined YouTube today. So this literally is kind of a last minute thing, but I just need to decompress. So what are the rules? So we're going to end this the way we started off. I hope you guys are able to do as best as you can in this situation. It's not easy. And remember, it's relationships, it's community, it's the people around you that are really going to help you. I just realized I wasn't doing screen share there. So that wasn't effective when I was talking to you about the Matt McKeever Unfiltered YouTube channel. So let's go to that. So this is my normal channel, which while it's amazing that so many of you guys watch the live stream, you guys never subscribe, which is a little insulting. But anyways, if we go to Matt McKeever Unfiltered, I don't even know if it's going to show up, but oops, Unfiltered. Oh, there it is. Oh, 60 subs. Wonderful. Well, appreciate that, guys. So again, jump over, join it. I hope we can provide value there. We'll put together that crypto thing. But Peter, let me know if I screwed this up on sound, but I'm hoping I didn't.
What are the rules? Oh, Christ.
We're good? Okay.
What are the rules?
I just need a little levity. I'm sorry.
When you've just turned black and you can't switch back, well, you gotta go and find out the rules. What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? When you just turn black and you can't switch back, well, you gotta go and find out the rules. What are the rules?
Here we go with this.
What are the rules? When your race has changed, life can be real strange when you're trying to figure out all the rules. Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? When you've kept your brain, but the world's insane, how the hell you gonna find out the rules?
Good luck, guys. These rules are fucking insane, but you know what? If we stick in this together, we build a community, we speak out, you get your financial house in order. Worst case, let's go build our own country. Best case, we can save this country we've got right now. I think we've still got a shot. So again, I really appreciate you guys. If you stumbled into my YouTube channel for the first time, we'd love a subscribe. Love for you to smash the like button, share this. But even more important, share your honest and open opinion with your own community, with your own friends, your own family. This is actually important. This is social norming, right? You need to let people know that you're comfortable having them disagree with you, that you're comfortable with having them think you're a conspiracy nut, that you're comfortable with them calling you, greedy because you care more about making money than saving lives. No, that's a bullshit argument, and we all know it because we've got more than a 99% survival rate. But again, we need to social norm the rest of the population to understand what the fuck's going on. Game theory dictates that we need to actually represent the change we want. So no snitching, right? So don't snitch, keep calm, get rich, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys on future videos. And I appreciate you guys. I'm glad that I'm not alone, because if I was alone, I would have to run to Texas or Florida right now. So you guys are what are keeping me sane. So I appreciate that. And I hope that maybe I help you guys a little bit as well. But we'll see you on the next video.